Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Bear Guys and 2T Fitness.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel Podcast. This is an Indiana Jones edition. We're talking Dial of Destiny. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man who hopes not to get shot 9 times, least of all by me, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. What do you got for him, Tom?
Speaking as an ancient, going to the moon's like going to Reno. Middle of nowhere. No blackjack.
I really like your Harrison Ford.
You know, I like one of those 8 possible lines there. I feel like typical of this movie, instead of streamlining the content, they just put all their ideas end to end.
Yeah, it's a bloated movie, to say the least.
Yeah, bloated was the word that kept coming to my mind when I was rewatching it for only the second time.
Right.
Yeah.
Here we are, towards the end. We still got a pitch, but this is the last of the Indiana Jones movies, people. We're talking Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, a 2023 film. That's a pretty unwieldy title, too.
Do you think so?
It's not as bad as Crystal Skull, but...
No. I think it's fine. I don't like I don't think it's unwieldy. I think the content and the alliteration are my problem.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this movie's directed by James Mangold. We've kind of talked around him in the other episodes. Buckle up. I'm going to talk for a while because I'm gonna list a lot of movies just because they're so varied.
Yeah.
I really want to get people a sense of what we're dealing with here. He directed Copland, kind of came on the scene with that. Girl Interrupted, Kate and Leopold, Identity. Then he gets into his prestige mode of his career with Walk the Line and 3:10 to Yuma. But then he does movies like Night and Day. He does a good Wolverine movie called Logan, but a bad Wolverine movie called The Wolverine.
Yeah. Never hear him shouting about that, do you?
Yeah. And then Ford versus Ferrari. So it's a real varied career, isn't it?
It certainly is. I mean, I haven't seen Ford versus Ferrari, but given the varied vehicle chases in this movie,
right,
it doesn't make me want to. If that movie is going to be entirely vehicle based, and this is the standard of vehicle sequences he has in his movies, I don't want to watch a movie that's full of them.
You're wielding your axe for me already. I can tell.
Well, maybe certainly on that front, and I said that before that I don't think he is able to handle action anywhere near as well as Spielberg.
On that, we absolutely agree. I don't
combine forces of Lucas and Spielberg.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
That's a no-brainer.
It's a totally different level.
Yeah.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, if you're gonna change director in the last movie when the action has been of such a high standard up to this point, it's strange to me that they would go with a director who simply can't handle that dimension of filmmaking.
See, but I don't think they think of him in that way. I understand what you're saying.
Well, they should.
I understand what you're saying, but
yeah.
When you look at his filmography, and I guess really it's only the 2 movies. When you look at, say, 3:10 to Yuma and Logan, I think they thought they had the guy.
But then doesn't the Wolverine cancel out Logan? So in the end, you're still rolling the dice.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah, and anyway. when you add Night and Day to it,
yeah,
because that movie feels like this movie,
right?
You know, I don't know.
And I don't know. I think, and I don't think, because Spielberg and Lucas, they started out as independent filmmakers and became mainstream studio
Sure.
people. I just don't think you can make that adaptation with the 90s independent directors.
Mm.
I don't
That
think
seems to be
it's
the
just-
trend right now, though, right? It's like every
I don't think the skills are transferable in
Yeah.
the way that they were in the 70s, and I think the studios think that they are,
maybe.
but they're not. I don't think 90s indie directors have the skill set to handle big studio movies.
But it seems like every single indie director that is thought of as the new find
Yeah,
ends up directing a superhero movie.
Yeah.
Like they put them right into action.
yeah, and most of the time it kills their career before it even gets started.
Yeah. Well, for all our talk about this particular movie and well, maybe not our talk, but just the general consensus, the public talk about what a misfire it was, what a failure it was, both critically and financially. This movie still has 69% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay. Did they just do that because it's set in 1969? Or they just like
Maybe.
It's just like we're tired of compiling these statistics. Let's just make it the same year that the movie was set.
But where it gets sad is the money.
Well, I need you to educate me on this because word is out on the street that this was a flop, and I'm unable to kind of. I don't understand what a flop means anymore. So you're gonna have to give me a financial education here.
Well, here's the problem, or the way I see it. It's budget. I had a budget
Yeah.
of just under $300 million. It's $294 million budget.
So they overspent on the budget.
And I
so
don't
they're
think that
unlikely
accounts
to-
for advertising, which would be like another $100 million.
Wow.
So when you have an opening weekend of 60.3, only take in 174.4 in the USA and then 383.9 in the world, you know. Even Crystal Skull doubled that money worldwide.
Do you think that there is a generational problem here?
I do. Because this movie is all nostalgia.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it does
Sure.
in that way it's not programmed for a broader audience. It's not built for younger people.
I agree.
And it's funny because we've done the Spider-Man series and we talked an awful lot about, this series is weird. It's like they never stop. We
Yeah.
go from Tobey Maguire to Mark Webb's with Andrew Garfield and
Yeah.
then we go right into this kid. But you know what's funny is in that last movie, because they did that, they were able to, you can argue
Yeah.
to what success that was,
Yeah.
but they were able to use it in their story. And this
Does-
with
Yeah.
the gaping holes or gaps between the third and the fourth movie and then the fourth and the fifth movie, it's not appealing to a younger audience, and older people, I don't think there's as many people like you and me who will go out of our way to see films in a theater. They're like, "Oh, wait."
Right. Agreed.
So,
Especially when you know in advance it's gonna end up on Disney Plus. Although
yeah.
it took a while, and I think that speaks to the kind of complicated box office situation where they felt like they had to like squeeze out
Eke out as much as possible from
the video on demand side before that they put it up for free
yeah.
on a streaming service.
With
Yeah,
a note that says, "Please buy this. We need all the help we can get."
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the generation that cares about this movie, I think you're right, are not as interested in going out to the theaters and seeing it. And I just think it's also a case of the audience for this movie might be dying. So unless you
Mm-hmm.
you show a way forward to a new audience, and for all the criticism that we and many people have had of the Star Wars movies, Disney has been very good about making connections to younger audiences and different demographics that this this franchise is going to appeal to, but there's no light at the end of the tunnel here for Indiana Jones. I mean, this is a movie about aging and death,
Yeah, right.
sort of almost maliciously so.
I know, right? Yeah, you didn't think when we met Indiana Jones in 1981, you didn't think we'd end up seeing a suicidal version of that character.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I going having listened to our ranking episode, which I realized kind of sounded like I was criticizing Harrison Ford's acting, which I wasn't. And in rewatching the movie, I realized that part of the problem is if you cast your movie well but make bad choices for the characters,
Yeah.
you end up with with people doing their job so well that it really bums you out.
Yeah.
So like when Harrison Ford is playing a character who they want, the filmmakers have decided they want to be bored with life. He's very good at doing that.
Right.
So you get bored watching him, not because he's not doing his job, but because he's
Because
doing
he
his
is
job
doing
properly.
his job. And it's
But that's not his fault.
yeah, it's funny you say that because that was more of my takeaway on this watching. I remember saying in the ranking episode that I gravitated towards his performance because I thought it was a different performance, and it is. But I also think on this second watching, I agree more with you. It's a shade of Indiana Jones I don't want and don't need.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of like the Mark Hamill situation. Is
Yeah.
they don't want to do it, but they're professionals. They're going to play whatever you give them to the hilt.
I didn't get any sense that Harrison Ford
No,
disagreed with where this character was, like Mark Hamill had. But you're right in the sense that, of course, they're both professionals and they're both going to come in and do their work.
yeah. Even when it's so clearly from the outside the wrong direction to be taking the character.
Yeah.
I actually don't think that about The Last Jedi, but we'll get there.
Someday.
But here, absolutely do, and it does seem to me that that their choices are informed by what they did with Han Solo in The Force Awakens as well.
That's possible.
I mean, in both in wanting to recreate that and then also wanting to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
I think basically the reason that Indiana Jones doesn't die in this movie has nothing to do with whether it's the right narrative choice or not. It's all to do with the fact that James Bond has just died on screen. We've seen a bunch of Avengers die, and Han Solo dies in The Force Awakens. That's it. It's a corporate franchise decision. It's not a story decision.
I mean, you're speculating, but
Well,
I'm not saying you're wrong.
if those movies hadn't happened, I think Indiana Jones would have died at the end of this movie, and because everything off screen is telling us that this is Harrison Ford's last movie, but the movie itself refuses to commit to that.
So you're reading my mind now and taking my notes off of my page because
Good.
that was one of the things that I kept writing down was that we already did The Last Crusade, and The Last Crusade is a send-off. It's saying goodbye. This movie is goodbye and refuses to say goodbye.
Agreed.
It's strange.
Yeah, and it is extremely strange, and I guess it suggests that they don't want to let go of the. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much and read too much into what they have in mind for this franchise. It's it's been speculated that they're just waiting for Harrison Ford to die so they can digitally do whatever they want with Indiana Jones.
Ugh.
I mean, that's a dark possibility, but the movie clearly does not want this to be the last word on the Indiana Jones franchise.
Yeah.
Even though it's hard to imagine that even though we said this about Crystal Skull, that Harrison Ford still has one Indiana Jones movie in him. I guess, you could animate, or you could have him as a 90-year-old and animate around the rest of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know they see in the future of this franchise, or indeed of movies. Both are very scary possibilities.
Well, let's get to the meat of it. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, my first note is I remember having this reaction in the theater.
Yeah.
Because we go from the Disney logo to the Paramount logo to the Lucasfilm logo, which dissolves into a lock.
Yeah. Yeah, my very first note, and you can see I'm keeping an open mind here on my second viewing of the movie. Too many logos. Already, like, immediately dismissing the movie out of hand. But it's, I mean, I think that's a justified criticism, because you've got three choices of a logo you can convert into the beginning of the movie,
Right.
as is traditional with the Indiana Jones films. And they went with the Lucasfilm logo turning into a lock.
I wrote it down. My one-word review of Lucasfilm turning into a lock was offended.
Well, yeah, it's like the Lucasfilm logo only seems to look like a lock in James Mangold's mind, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yes.
And I got the impression as the film went on that James Mangold is fascinated by locks, and I am not. And no amount of locks you show me on screen is going to convince me of that, James.
That's great. The one thing I did notice about it more than anything on this viewing, which I don't think I got in the theater, was that logo doesn't look a lot like that lock.
Oh, I didn't. I had to upon my first viewing, I didn't catch it.
Oh wow, okay.
I didn't catch that it was a conversion. I had heard or read some review of the movie that told me that, and on the second viewing, I was like, oh, clearly it's supposed to be the Lucasfilm logo turning into a lock, but it doesn't look like a lock, and it doesn't look like that lock.
Yeah, exactly.
More to the point. But talk about, like, missed opportunities, right? I understand that you don't want to do anything for the Paramount logo, because the Paramount logo isn't going to be there globally when it's distributed. Like, it won't be there for every version of the movie that's seen around the world.
Don't care.
There's some kind of corporate instability there, so I understand that you're not going to do...
You can do it for America, though.
You could do it for America, but then they'd have to adjust it. So I understand not doing that, but the Disney logo is a fucking castle, and this movie begins in Nazi Germany, which is full of fucking castles.
No, see, what you hit on was the reason they didn't do it. They don't want the Disney castle turning into a Nazi castle.
Okay. All right. So yeah, maybe that was it. Maybe Bob Iger came in and was like,
"No, fuck that."
Okay.
He said, "No, you're
Here's
not doing
my
that
first
shit."
note.
Yeah.
Don't compare us to Nazis in the opening moments of the movie. But that would be that. Oh, you do a preamble set in ancient Syracuse, and I don't know, it comes that something, but that one seems to be staring you in the face, whereas, as we said, Lucasfilm and the lock is entirely an invention of James Mangold's imagination.
I almost wondered if Lucas said, "Hey, Spielberg's not involved anymore. Put me on, convert my logo."
He's not involved anymore.
I know, but
and clearly, I mean, like, it's interesting because you lose the skill, the effortless skill of Steven Spielberg. That's and you also lose the eccentric choices of George Lucas.
True.
It's lose-lose. You lose both of them, you lose Indiana Jones, I think. But anyway. And the movie starts with nothing but limitations on its content. So we hear a lot of German shouting.
Yeah.
The background is blurry, and Indiana Jones has a bag on his head. So we're basically saying, okay, we're struggling to show Indiana Jones's face.
Yeah. Exactly.
CGI, when done badly, looks like a bunch of blurry backgrounds.
Yeah.
And we're back with the Nazis. So
it's as though we are now Indiana Jones from Last Crusade, because the audience is once again going to say, Nazis? These
Yeah.
guys? I hate these guys. But now we're not.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we all hate Nazis, but as Indiana Jones fans, we also hate Nazis because we're just tired of fucking seeing them. Pick someone else.
The movie even admits to this when he says too many Nazis.
Yeah.
There are these weird moments in the movies where they're saying the quiet part loud
Yeah.
in terms of all the things that are going wrong with the movie, and it's amazing how many times they actually spell it out to the audience in dialogue. Quite how many shortcomings there are in this movie,
I know.
as if they can't help themselves. And that the first explosion that you see, I mean, that looks like it's happening in a galaxy far, far away.
Far
It doesn't
away,
like-
yeah.
It doesn't look like it's... And, you know, for comparing this side by side with Crystal Skull, I mean, the lighting is oversaturated in Crystal Skull. This is no better.
No.
The way that they're trying to pick out faces with spotlights
Mhm.
looks terrible.
Yeah.
It's so imbalanced.
Well, let's talk about the face. Because they take that hood
Well-
off.
Well, yeah, but let's first talk about that hood, because in Crystal Skull, here's the comparison.
Come
in Crystal
on.
Skull,
How deep do you have to go? The minutia of the hood?
No, this is important, right?
All
Because
right.
this is how we've chose to introduce the character. So in Crystal Skull, they reintroduced Indy in the trunk of a car because they wanted to. Because George Lucas is a fucking madman.
Yeah.
But it was a choice that made sense to him. They're putting the bag on the head because it's easier to animate around. The less we see of his face, the less work we have to do.
Yeah.
And that's all you can think about. That's not a choice. That's a...
Convenience.
That's management. A
Yeah.
management problem. So...
But what I find strange is that you juxtapose that with taking the hood off, and James Mangold chooses to several times kind of close up on this face as though, check us out. Check out how good this looks. And I said this in the rankings episode. This face looks better than any other de-aging face that I think I've seen. Still looks terrible.
Yeah, it looks less offensive on a small screen than a big screen.
Yeah, the big
certainly.
screen was
I
bad.
also suspect they've used some of the lag time between this coming out on Disney Plus to do a bit of post production, which is not unheard of when digital effects go wrong in Disney movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you've not solved any of the fundamental problems. You still get the cat's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You can't seem to get rid of that byproduct of eyes looking like they belong to felines.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't make the movement of the head look real.
No, it's pure
Whenever-
Polar Express.
Whenever Harrison Ford moves his head around, it looks like he has Parkinson's. It's like
Mhm.
there's one for every one head movement he does. There's about 18 glitches
Yeah.
that surround it.
And weirdly, the less he moves his head, for me, the worse it gets. Like when he slowly turns his head somewhere, that's even worse.
And basically, the people who make these movies, and also in the response to it, they're thinking about this all wrong, because they think that this is just it's just the face, that everything besides the face is the same, and it's not. Making this choice to do like a de-aged digital face changes the entire cinematic language of how you do a scene like this.
Right.
You have to do everything in shot reverse shot, so then you can directly compare and contrast how real a human actor of their appropriate age looks to this monstrosity.
Right.
His face is not the same color or texture as the other humans in the scene. Why does this not occur to anyone as a weakness
I don't know.
of your film?
I'll tell you what else
And
is
this-
a weakness.
Yeah,
Because that U.S. bomb hits the floor,
right.
and I wrote down they're doing Money Pit jokes.
Yeah, and that was
Don't get me. I like Money Pit, but I don't want my Indiana Jones movie to be copying from Money Pit.
That goes back to the Jiminy Glick interview with Steven Spielberg, where he tries to school him on the money pit before he's saying, well, I actually produced the money pit. So I say, no, I don't think that happened in there. No, I think if you go back to the money pit, you'll see that I'm Rex. There's also, I don't want to keep going on about the de-aging, because at some point you just have to accept that they did it and move on. But there's no internal consistency. They don't have an etiquette for doing it yet. After all this time.
Right.
Like, they de-age Mads Mikkelsen
Mm-hmm.
when all they really need to do is just lighten it, like take the grey out of his hair.
Sure.
But he's also playing older than he is in the modern day scenes.
Right.
Where's the internal consistency and logic here?
Agreed.
I don't understand. Like, sometimes they're just happy to grey up someone's hair and put a mustache on them, like we've done for decades with in movies. Other time they feel like, no, we really need to digitally de-age this character. But there's no rules. There's nothing. There's no Bible to how to do this.
Right. When you think
They're
about
just
the
scrambling
times
in the dark.
we've talked about movies, say like the first three movies in the era that this series was made, how much careful attention they paid to everything. You know, you talk about throughout the filmmaking, effects wise. And to your point, it seems like, I don't know what it is. It's something within, say, this de-aged face where it makes filmmakers lazier.
Definitely. Well,
they're not paying as much attention to detail. Yeah.
It starts with laziness, because you're essentially saying we don't want to deal with casting another actor and the ramifications of that. And that, again, is clearly a corporate decision because of the unpopularity of doing it with Adolf Eichmann in Solo. I can't remember his name. Aidan, what's this? We can never
whatever his name was. But
Adam Ehrenhardt.
Yeah.
That's not right. That's nowhere near. But that's what this is. You know, if that hadn't compromised their box office, I don't know if they'd necessarily gone down this route, because the last time they did it, they cast another actor. The last time they made him young, actually, the last two times they did it, last three times they did it, they cast a younger actor. So,
all right,
what's the problem? So I since we've been going through these movies, and with your help, I've realized that each movie has two MacGuffins. There's a MacGuffin for the in quotes cold open, and then there's an overall MacGuffin.
This is one of my big notes. I didn't think of it the first time I watched it.
Nope.
But
completely forgot about the Holy Lance. But this is your cold open MacGuffin.
Except it's not, because it's disregarded so fast, and then the dial comes into the movie so quickly. The dial is in the front scene, you know?
But they did that in both Crusade and a little bit in Crusade, because you introduced the Grail, Henry writing the Grail diary, but
it's not anything that the characters want.
No,
it's just introduced.
And I was going to say a little bit not that anyone wants anything in Crystal Skull that is discernible, but I suppose it's a different Crystal Skull in the opening.
This is the thing. This is the thing that made me think of this, was that a bad tendency started in Crystal Skull, where the front MacGuffin was related to the MacGuffin, but kind of separate. Whereas this one, I disregard.
There were different skulls.
Yeah, I disregard the lance almost completely because of how quickly everyone's like, this piece of shit's a fake, and so it all was the dial almost immediately for me.
So much so that I completely forgot that this was even in the movie.
Yeah, right.
On my second viewing, I was like, "Oh right, they were looking for something else." I completely forgot they were looking for something other than the Dial of Destiny.
Mm-hmm. And this is a note that I have throughout this film, where you see, it's like you can timestamp when movies are made, because you have the original trilogy, and there's so much stuff that happens in Crystal Skull where you're like, "Nah, this is a bad thing that you're starting to do," which is now just how movies are made now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, my next note speaks exactly to that. How do you create an aesthetic that is simultaneously too dark and overlit?
Right.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
this front scene does exactly that, and that's modern
It's
movies
all
in a
that.
nutshell.
Yeah.
Those are my two main criticism of movies in 2023. I can't see enough, or I'm seeing too much.
Hmm. They can do things that are smart and dumb.
Yep.
There's a moment at the beginning when the Nazis have Indiana Jones's shit laid out,
Mm.
and we see Marion's picture. And I thought, this is just for
Well,
the audience. This is
also
the
that
only reason you're, you
Yeah.
know, it's like
It also screws up the timeline as has been established in previous movies, which apparently I attribute far more importance to than anyone else making these franchise movies. But I still think it matters that the last film dealt with how their relationship broke up. So chronologically, he wouldn't have been carrying around a picture of Marion.
no, yeah,
this
I
point,
thought the same
but-
thing. Yeah, you're right.
They've broken up.
that
at
was
this
the
point.
thing-
Why would he have it?
That was the
that's
thing
for us.
that
It's
because I
totally
wrote
for our
down in my
benefit.
notes, I
Totally
wrote
for our
down
benefit.
laugh out loud because I forgot that was my main objection because there was absolutely no reason that Indiana Jones, the piece of shit we knew from earlier films, the womanizer, would have Marion's picture with him at that time.
And yeah, that too. And there's not even a character judgment. It's just what the last movie told us happened with their relationship.
Right.
And the movie burns that for the sake of doing something entirely for the
Yeah.
audience's benefit. And I don't object to putting moments of fan service in for the audience benefit, but they have to jibe with what's going on in world. And this is an early example of this movie's not going to care about how whether it feels authentic to the
Or not.
characters or whether it feels authentic to the world, as long as the audience can
Right.
get a kick out of it. And I don't get a kick out of something that compromises the integrity of what I'm seeing on screen. So, and also, I hate to do this because just again, it seems like such a simple thing to get right that they screw up. Where Indy is in relation to the action in the opening sequence is wrong. He knows more than his captors, and he's ahead of the game at all times. And we've talked in previous movies, he's always behind the eight ball. He's always behind the audience, and they've reversed it for this sequence. And
They've kind of
I don't even
reversed
think
it for
they're
the whole
consciously-
movie.
But yeah, I don't think it's a conscious reversal. I think it's just a misremembering of what kind of,
Of
a hero
who he
Indiana
is.
Jones is. Yeah. And then, given that it's they're taking over the character,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's disappointing that they would get the basics wrong
Yeah,
so
no.
quickly.
I'm with you. I don't know. It's like, where do you start? That bomb hits. You were talking about the CGI-ness of the buildings, but when that bomb goes down through whatever it is, the 90 floors that I guess are in this castle, and that
It's the Tower of Terror.
yeah,
That could have
totally,
been another crossover.
and the explosion, the wood going everywhere, the fire, the smoke. My note is that it feels like I'm turning pages in a comic book. I have lost all semblance of reality.
I think that's an insult to comic books, to be perfectly honest.
Good point.
You're right. It's total fantasy land. I mean, this adventure might as well be happening, in Mordor.
Yeah, right.
Or when they're on the train, all I could think about was this looks like we're in a Harry Potter
Yeah.
movie
Me too.
or the Polar Express.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, there's a sequence of things that I don't think I even really caught the first time I watched it. When they go ahead and they kidnap Toby,
Toby Jones.
Toby
yes,
Jones.
sure. His lifelong friend.
another lifelong friend that we've never met. When he gets on that motorcycle and there's that car chase, I started watching that and thinking to myself, I don't think a lot of this is real. I think I'm watching CGI motorcycles and CGI cars flip on the road.
Yeah.
And I did not care for that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it feels like it doesn't. None of it feels like a real place.
You know what it felt like? If you're spending $294 million on your movie, it felt like you were spending it in all the wrong spots.
For sure, yeah. And also going straight into a bike chase also tells me that not only do we not have any new ideas, but it strikes me that in the fan service era of filmmaking, when you're doing like a belated franchise movie, it becomes a virtue to have no new ideas and to only go back to that which has come before. So originality is almost impossible because you need to come out of the gate plugging all those classic
Indie
tropes.
moments.
Yeah, so it's not just a lack of it's not just that we've exhausted all our ideas. It's also that the form itself is more inclined for us to rake over old material. Which makes it hard to come up with anything original or surprising.
Yeah.
Although I still think this movie should have tried harder with that.
Yeah.
And, you know, 5 minutes in, it's mostly talk. It's progressing very slowly. No worse than Crystal Skull, certainly no better. Like this opening is not moving faster than Crystal Skull.
No.
Which I found noticeably slow and talky. And, you know, because we need to...
It sounds like you're setting up your court case again, by the way.
No, I'm just, you know, I'm reflecting, you know, this was supposed to... This was supposed to better and apologize for Crystal Skull. It made all the same mistakes.
And it's not doing that, yeah.
It made all the same mistakes, and it's not even... It doesn't have any of the same successes, as far as I see it. And it also feels like... you've mentioned you've insulted comic books, I'm gonna insult cartoons here, because everything feels like the cartoon version of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Feels like someone who might like it feels like James Mangold hasn't seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, but he's read the treatment. Someone's shown him a diagram of what Tote looked like or what Indy looked like when he was in the German outfit, and he's like, oh yeah, let's do that.
It seems more like oh shit, I'm blanking on, you know, the storyboards. It looks like he just saw the storyboards. Yeah.
He just saw the storyboards, which, you know, Steven Spielberg likes to do, so it's quite possible. And the punching of the Nazis, it's like this is a caricature of what Indiana Jones does in these in past movies. It's the Baroque version of what happens in Raiders or Temple. And, you know, because we have to keep Harrison Ford separate for entirely technological reasons, this scene has to involve a lot of scenes without him.
Yeah, right.
So it's just the Germans with Basil. Or, you know, Dr.
Or with Mads, yeah.
Voller with the Germans, and, you know, you can't even have the hat and the whip and the bag with him. That's separate from him.
Yeah. I love that moment too when he sees his bag, and the first thing he does is take off his Nazi uniform and puts on his shit. Like, that's gonna help him, you know.
I think that was the first moment that I respected in the movie that they thought about, you know, how overblown the reintroduction of Indiana Jones was in Crystal Skull, and they wanted to sort of counter that. So there's no fanfare when he puts the outfit on. It cuts away almost immediately. I thought that was again,
they'll save that for the last shot of the movie. Thank you.
But there might be a technological impetus for that, in the sense that you know it doesn't look good enough. So let's cut away. But it's nice because it's like, well, you know, we don't. That last movie did that. We don't want to do the same.
Sure.
And we just want to kind of cut to the chase. Yeah, the first strains of the Raiders theme, and we have to watch Indiana Jones running like a character from a Shrek movie over the top of the train.
Oh boy, I tell you, my note is that as that music starts, this movie feels unworthy of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? and it's pure.
Why can't they get movement right?
I don't
can't they
know,
get-
but it's
Well, I mean, not why can't they, but why don't they know that they can't and then do something else?
right. Just like I don't know. Go to Europe, film a train, get an actor. You're far away. Get an actor.
You don't have to go to Europe. You just need a train.
That's true.
See someone to run on top of a train. I mean, stunt people still exist.
Yeah, exactly. Just film somebody running on a fucking train. Just call Andrew Davis. You want to know anything about trains? Call the director of The Fugitive. Harrison Ford has his fucking number, I'm sure.
Oh, I mean, there's enough of the fugitive in this movie that Andrew Davis would have been the perfect choice. I think.
Mm.
It would be. It's based at times. It's an unofficial sequel to the fugitive.
Yeah, that's true.
Which you think I'd like more. And what is the character point and message of seeing Basil break in front of the Germans, except as a way to introduce him to the audience?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing we see him doing is kind of like caving under interrogation. That doesn't go anywhere with his characterization. I mean, he's only in the movie for about 10 minutes more.
Right.
But, like, that's not telling us anything. All it's telling us is who he is.
I also think it's like I also kind of laughed because there's this part of me that thinks that this entire front scene is so misguided in the sense of what year is it that we're in right now? Did they tell us?
Well, at the end, yeah.
Well, it's got to be
45.
yeah, it's got to be 45 because it's the end of World War II.
Maybe 44, yeah.
But to me, I can't place this in relation to, you know, where Indiana Jones was at the end of Crusade.
No.
What would bring him back? And so Toby, he just says, we're trying to save history.
Mm-hmm.
Noble, I suppose, but what a risk to like go to a Nazi castle surrounded by 500 guards, just you and your professor friend. None of it makes sense.
And it doesn't have to be this rogue mission because the last movie teed us up for Indiana Jones being a wartime spy.
Mm-hmm.
So why isn't this a record of those adventures? Why is this still a rogue archaeological mission?
Yeah.
And is it literally like, well, Crystal Skull talked about that, so we don't want to go anywhere near it? I think that is the impetus.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, but yet it is still during wartime, and we still don't get to see these tantalizing wartime espionage adventures that we were promised in the last movie.
Yeah.
But you're gonna set it during World War II at a crucial moment when spies could make a difference.
Yeah.
My
well,
God, yeah.
I'll tell you the one thing I did like, because he finds out quite quickly that this lance is fake,
Mm-hmm.
and
well, no, he lets us know because he goes, "That's fake. That's fake. That's fake. That's fake."
Yeah.
And he like anytime you can have a character walking without talking in an Indiana Jones movie, it will be improved.
yes.
Carry on.
But what's funny to me is that then they find that Archimedes dial,
Sure.
and it's it's Toby Jones that finds it. Basil.
Basil, yeah.
So Basil finds it,
Or
and
Baz.
he kind of just shows it to
I know,
Indiana.
Baz.
He just kind of shows it to Indiana Jones, and he just grabs it and says, "Bring it." And like that grave robber like that piece of shit kind of Indiana Jones really came out. But I don't think, it's not a commentary for the movie.
No.
The movie doesn't get that that's what he's doing,
Agreed. And it again we're back with it has no power. So we're resetting to the point of skepticism again.
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of don't need to do that because the subject doesn't come up unless you bring it up, right? It's sort of like
Mm-hmm. Sure.
if either of them, whether they care about it because they can raise money for it or cash, as it's referred to in this movie, or because it's archaeological interest. The idea that it might have some supernatural power or fantasy connotations shouldn't enter into this at this point. Just be like, it's Archimedes' dial. It's
Right.
an important artifact.
It's an important artifact.
Let's take it. But yet we have to have this moment to show that somehow, again, Indiana, after Last Crusade, the events of the Last Crusade, Temple of Doom, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indy still doesn't believe that any artifact that he finds can have any power beyond the world.
Mm-hmm.
And what is even worse is that this movie tries to make the argument that the magic of this movie is more scientific and mathematical.
Yeah, because it's math. Yeah, I know. I noticed that this viewing.
I mean, it's like you're trying to change the terms of the deal here.
Right.
And the last movie already did it for you. It already made the transition into science fiction. So not only do you not have to work as hard, but I got news for you. Your fantasy bullshit is the most fantasy bullshit that's been in any of these movies. And you're either going to have to deal with it, but you can't talk your way out of it.
I think it's at least at the same level.
No, I mean, this is the most, the storyline, the fantasy storyline is the most implausible it's ever been in this series, in this movie.
All right, fine.
And yet they act as if it's the most rational and empirical. And that's very irritating.
That is irritating. That part of it, yes.
And they're already starting to build their defense for the proliferation of nonsense that will become the last half hour of this movie.
Right.
And then again, we get lines that are entirely for the audience's benefit and have nothing to do with what's happening in world. Have you ever met Hitler? Oh yeah, remember when he met Hitler in Last Crusade?
Yeah.
So what? So Indy's not even there to absorb that kind of coincidence.
Yes. You know, something happens too because there's the Colonel who... what is it, Colonel Weber?
Yeah.
What's that actor's name? Thomas Kretschmann?
Thomas Kretschmann, yeah.
This happens a lot in this movie because Indiana Jones does his little food fake out and is able to get past him on the train. Past a bunch of other people. He gets Basil. They get past that gun. That gun is shooting the train itself.
Yeah.
You know, they're so far removed from the Colonel, and then all of a sudden the Colonel looks up and they're like, wow, he can see them running past them, and he gets ahead of them so fast. There's something going on where people are catching up to other people in this movie in ways that are more fantastical than the end of this movie to me.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how ridiculous it is, you know?
It is as ridiculous as the historical epic that ends this movie.
Yeah.
And, you know, I noticed this when, like, we have a fake sky, but it has no supernatural connotations. Like, when we've seen a sky this fake before, it's invoked the fantastical, the ethereal. This is just a sky that doesn't look convincing because the technology you're using isn't working.
Isn't good enough.
It's like the representation of fantasy and CGI, the state of CGI graphics have caught up with each other and now they're one and the same. You can't tell what's supposed to be fantastical in this movie and what is supposed to represent real life.
Sure.
That is indistinguishable from each other. There's a line in here which I liked because it made me thought of a movie I like, not because I like it. Where I can't remember if it's Basil or Indy says, "Those aren't Nazis." And so I obviously thought about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Right, yeah.
And then I started to drift off because
I just rewatched Planes, Trains, and
me
Automobiles.
too. Thanksgiving, you got to do it every Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
It's a tradition. And then I thought, thinking about how great that movie is, how much better would it have been if Basil and Indy met here? Like, and I'm obviously thinking John Candy and Steve Martin meeting on the road in Planes,
yeah,
and
right.
Automobiles. I was like, you don't have to do the lifelong friend retcon.
Right.
It could just be that, like, we're both caught up in this. It could be that Basil is the guy trying to save history and Indy's the spy. Like, as soon as you make that leap, it becomes a better movie.
You come in with the hood on Toby Jones. And if you film it right, people will think it's Indiana Jones.
There you go.
And then in the background, you see Indy in the Nazi uniform, and he throws everything away to save this American. That's what you do.
Or this Brit.
Brit. Sorry.
Sure. No, that's okay.
I consider you all one of us.
Thank you, that's kind. Well, I guess, we were both allies, weren't we? So
Yeah.
we were part of the same war effort. I mean, when you bothered to join the war effort in... What was it, man?
That was a scathing indictment.
After it had started to affect you, the world was basically donezo. And you were like, well, I guess
all right,
now
we'll
that
throw in.
Oh, now that you're in... No, I don't mean that at all. We're just as territorial and imperial as a culture. Yeah, the matching of foreground and background's as bad as it is in the Jungle Ride from Crystal Skull. It's just darker and beiger.
Mm-hmm.
So, first use of the whip, 18 minutes in.
I noticed that. I have that. I was just staring at that note.
Interesting. And I think I always do this at the beginning of a movie. Okay, let's see how many times they use it.
I only counted 2. Did I miss one?
No, I think you might be right. And I was interested. Are they going to stick to the rule for 3? And then I didn't even bother checking because I was like, no, this movie doesn't care about structure.
Yeah, no. You're right.
There's some bad comedy here. The misfiring of the gun is barely funny.
Barely.
The comedic when he says "not me," as if so. The comedic idea is that Basil, your lifelong friend, is trying to shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
This is a stamp gag all over again. There's no internal logic to this joke.
Yeah, there's a lot of internal logic missing. Indiana Jones. If you're in a fight to the death on the top of a moving train, and you have the moment to kick the colonel off the train, you just kick him. You don't take the time to say, to the victor goes the spoils, before you do it.
And that line is such a placeholder. Like, that they couldn't think of anything better.
That's so terrible.
And I love the fact that it's it's even more generic than I Like Ike, which I suspect was a little bit of a placeholder in the last movie.
Yeah.
But it was one I was like, hey, it's 1957. It was a slogan. Cool. This is to the victor goes this. What does that mean? The spoils of pushing you off a train?
Right. Nonsensical.
It's worse than Our Venice.
Yeah, right.
It's more impenetrable than Our Venice.
Well, here's something else too, because you're giving a lot of play to the end of this movie, but you know what I find to be the most fantastical thing in this movie?
Go ahead.
Mads Mikkelsen survives that fucking hit.
Does he even have a scar?
He has a slight scar on his forehead.
Okay, well, they need to make more of that scar.
That you didn't even notice. Exactly.
That I didn't even notice. Well, that's Disney Lucasfilm, isn't it?
There's no way that guy survived. His face is caved in. There's no way he survived.
Disney Lucasfilm is resurrection without explanation.
Yeah.
All the way through to, Sabine in Ahsoka gets run through with a lightsaber in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
There she is. No impact in the next episode.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon died for nothing. But what also gets me about this scene, which is nearly over,
mercifully
20 minutes in, and the sequence is threatened to end at least twice, but
right.
We're still gonna have 2 more minutes of false endings.
Sure.
Yeah, it's...
Well, and there's one more thing that happens where I knew that this movie didn't have its priorities straight and had its attention where it shouldn't, because Indiana Jones and Basil Shaw jump off that train into the water.
Yeah.
Cut to them in the water. Mm-hmm. Cut to them walking up the hill with the train CGI'd crash that we never got to see.
You see, that should have turned into the Disney logo, because in the extended version of the Disney logo, it starts with a train over the bridge that looks no more or less realistic than
this train. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they, it was one of those things where they spent $298 million. They were never going to call Andrew Davis, so they can't wreck a real train. But
I love the idea that Andrew Davis is just sitting by his phone
waiting.
on the off chance that somebody wants to make a practical movie involving a train.
But they wouldn't even take the money or time to show us the train crashing digitally.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they just cut away from it, don't they?
You know, they just cut away from it. Yeah.
Huh. You see, I would be that didn't occur to me, and I would be in favor of that choice for the sake of narrative economy, but that's not why they're doing it. They
No,
want to
it's
spend
not.
money.
That's exactly.
Yeah. So they made the right choice for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Can you imagine how bad that would look? That would have looked.
Yeah.
That train
I
crash.
can. It would have been terrible. It doesn't even make what they do show you doesn't even make sense logistically.
Yeah.
Because they just show the train. You know, there was a what was it? A missile, a bomb. The planes are dropping bombs and they drop one on the bridge.
Because those aren't Nazis.
Yeah. And what they show is that the train hit it and just stopped in the space that the bomb created.
That's right. It's not even clear, is it?
Not even remotely what would happen. The train just doesn't stop.
Right. Wow.
It's terrible.
How
Everything
can you
about
make
it.
how can you make those? How can you fuck up blowing up a bridge and a train falling between
I don't know.
the space and the tracks? Like that's the easiest thing
Right.
that you could possibly stage in a movie.
Show at least one
especially
thing.
when you don't have the challenge of having anything
of having
real there.
yeah, totally. All right. Well, we did it. We got through the first front scene.
We did. We're 22 minutes in, and we're, I'm sure we're going to take a break, but I'll just say as a teaser, we're about to get into what I consider to be the best part of this movie.
Great. I agree with you.
So, there's room for optimism.
We'll be right back.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beers. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back. Here we are. Man, that was a lot for probably people to take in. We're talking Dial of Destiny from 2023, directed by James Mangold. If you like this movie, you probably didn't like that last segment.
No, but you need to know that it's not okay to like that. So.
Yeah, you have to.
Especially if you're a fan of Indiana Jones movies. If you're under some kind of illusion that that is okay as the front scene of an Indiana Jones movie, I'm sorry, you need to be you need to be re-educated on that one.
Clockwork Orange style.
Yes. Just forced to watch the start of every good movie.
Yeah.
Just so
right.
you're conditioned to know, oh, that's not okay to begin a movie that way.
Right.
Fucking Touch of Evil on a loop.
Well, we're gonna when we get back to reality and leave
Yeah.
Cartoon Land, we've left.
Well, not for long.
It's you know what it felt like? It felt like watching the front scene. Felt like watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That's what it felt like.
I was gonna say it felt like one of our favorite animated title sequences, like Weekend at Bernie's.
Bernie's too. That's great.
Could you
Oh, man.
imagine all of those events could have been represented as like they could have like switched the sort of switched the Bond pastiche and just had all that happen in the titles in like an elaborate title sequence. That would have been amazing.
Well, we're gonna open up on Indiana's New York apartment.
Yeah. Our
Now, if
second
you
tick-
want to do the sequel thing, sorry to interrupt, but if you
No,
want to
it's
do the
okay.
sequel thing of showing pictures, I'll give it to Mangold for this scene. This is how you do it. I'm fine with it. If you blink, you'll miss Henry Jones up on the shelf. That's all I need.
So, I mean, this is the Disney Lucasfilm method, isn't it? They like to sweat the fan service details, so in the hope that you'll rewatch scenes endlessly for franchise Easter eggs.
Pause, take a picture, zoom in.
Yeah. The last season of Star Wars Minute made me realize that J.J. Abrams' attention in Rise of Skywalker was all on getting as many of those moments into the movie as possible at the expense of story, and it's a little bit like that here too. So
Sure.
I think it's a Disney Lucasfilm edict. But we start with a ticking clock, which is our second ticking clock of the movie.
Yeah.
I like all the audio-visual comparisons in the movie, completely forgettable and all in James Mangold's mind. For him, this movie is about clocks.
We're
don't know
talking
why.
about Dials of Destiny, Tom. I
Yeah,
gotta have a
it's-
click.
But this is not.
I gotta have a working clock.
But then they're just like, it's a time travel movie, so let's make it about clocks, like it's Back to the Future.
Yeah.
But I obviously,
Oh, how
like-
great would it have been if Doc Brown was expecting that thing at one time?
well, I'm gonna get into the so basically that they make a very inept time travel film. They said that like having moved into that subgenre, they don't understand the rules of it and they don't understand how it works. But anyway, we'll get there.
Fine.
I mean, I love all the. This is where the kind of Bond pastiche really starts. Aside from doing another like Bond like cold open, but like on Her Majesty's Secret Service, anything that is of significance from past adventures is just on his desk.
Right.
Which is exactly what happens in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And this, like, once we've done the tracking shot, when we find him in the chair, these next few minutes are for me the best part of the movie by a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And for very good reasons. First, the song choice.
Yeah.
The trailer faked us out by thinking it was going to be Sympathy for the Devil.
Sympathy for the Devil. I know. Yeah.
But we went with Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles, which is a great catalog pit. It's not the obvious choice. It's a pretty deep cut. It speaks thematically to the movie, and it speaks to Bond's distaste for the Beatles in Goldfinger. And then secondly, the reveal of Ford's body, right? If you're into Harrison Ford as a film star, which I am even more so than Indiana Jones, to see the kind of aging of a sex symbol kind of display, and how much this series has been about the display of his body and kind of capping that off.
Right.
I really love that moment. I think that's a great film star moment.
I do too, and it's funny because, like you said, you're seeing what has happened to his body, but at the same time, he's an 80-year-old man, and he still looks fucking great.
Crazily, I mean,
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's the part of it in a purely sort of exploitative sense. It's something that when you're making a big Hollywood movie, you want to show off that you've got this 80-year-old film. Well, I don't know, 78. I don't know what he was. He was like 70 at the time he started filming the movie. But you've got this guy whose body is just incredible looking. You want to show it off as much as possible. And then thirdly, good fan service, right? Referencing the deleted continuity from Young Indiana Jones of a 90-year-old Indiana Jones complaining of one of these like segments that began the TV versions of Young Indiana Jones involved this very scene of old 90-year-old Indy telling kids across the way to turn down their music, playing the music
great.
too loud. So this is, but you don't need to have that knowledge. You don't need to have seen that. But if you do, it like I have, it enhances the moment. And it's all making a point that is important, which is that he is now an old man yelling, like he's an
old man yelling
an
at
old
cloud.
Old man yelling at the cloud, quite
Yeah.
literally yelling at the moon.
Right.
So I just think all of that is great, and this series is always good. One thing that works well in all these films, and this may be the only thing that works well in each of these movies, like intergenerational specificity. When Indy interacts with people from different generations,
Yeah.
you can see the generation gap, and you can see. Like you always know where Indy is in relation to the culture around him, and this scene sets that up really well.
I agree.
And I know it's been said that these hippies shouldn't be so excited about the space race, but I'll let it go. So all of that plus,
Well, I also think that it's smart that we're kind of.
What do you like about it?
Well, I think it's smart that we're focusing on the moon landing itself, because that means that we're looking towards the future, but our main character is somebody who's at an age where they can only look towards the past.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it means that, and on top of that, because of the tragedies that have befallen him in his personal life, it means he's stuck. He can't look forward like the rest of the country is. And that to me is interesting, and I think kind of smart.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We get so the last movie was all about the sunset look, whereas this movie has a sunrise look.
Yeah.
It kind of exploits that Spielbergian lens flare, and it always feels like it's sunrise wherever we are. And
but one of my notes is I really like the way New York looks in this movie.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but when we're in the apartment, I like it. I like that he's drinking instant coffee. I think again that's because that's an important. It's a very small detail, but it's a historically, and he's got like an electric kettle, and it's a very important one because in previous movies he couldn't be using this technology, so it does matter.
Sure.
I mean, it's not there for that reason. It's there to show that he's an alcoholic, but which I don't particularly care for. But. Because it doesn't really play into anything.
No.
I don't know why he has a photo of Marion from Raiders of the Lost Ark on the fridge. Seems like he'd have a more recent photograph, having only been separated from her by like a matter of months.
Like what? Months? Yeah.
That's there for our benefit, and it clashes with the world that is on screen.
It does, but I'll forgive the one thing because I like the joke at the end. He puts the magnet on her face.
Ah, right.
And I like that he removes it at the end. And if you blink, you miss it.
Yeah.
But that to me goes to character. And that's, I appreciate that. So when she opens up the door at the end of the movie and he removes the magnet that he put on her face to get out of trouble.
I totally missed that. I would have loved that scene to have been about that instead of reenacting a scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I agree.
That would have been great for me. So they buried the lead. The problem I have with it when he goes outside. I don't know why he's in New York. I can't rationalize why they decided to put him in New York instead of say Chicago or just just wherever he was.
To be honest, let's face it, it's so that he could get on a horse and ride a horse in a subway. I think so. I think they built backwards from that sort of thing.
Well, that's terrible. But it looks like a dreamscape version of late 1960s New York.
Well, I think it looks like the version because it's perennially always feels like it's at sunrise.
Yeah, absolutely. But also
But the buildings itself and that kind of thing, I was okay with.
it looks sometimes. I mean, sometimes it looks very one-dimensional. Sometimes it almost looks like Harrison Ford's gonna do a Wile E. Coyote and walk straight into the
Wall.
backdrop.
Yeah.
It's drawn to look like a three-dimensional image. And this lecture scene is so depressing. It's the
Well, so
depressing
that's one of my notes.
counterpoint
But
to the class scenes from before. It's like,
From
why
before.
would we want to see Indiana Jones at such a low point in his life?
I think I'm okay with it just because what I did like watching was I liked that I didn't really pick up on this on my first viewing, but I like the idea if you're going to make a movie about an 80-year-old man and it's an 80-year-old Indiana Jones and what his life is like then, I kind of like juxtaposing this scene against Raiders' scene in the sense of he's still very excited about archaeology, but there's nobody with love you on their eyelids anymore. I mean, they can't even stay awake, you know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of like that juxtaposition where what I like seeing was that Indiana Jones doesn't even realize it. He doesn't realize really. No, I guess that's not true. I was going to say he doesn't realize how disinterested they are, but he does.
Yeah, he does.
So
And he doesn't care. And
that's what it is that he doesn't care. Yeah.
He doesn't care. He said there's also a line in this scene which again it feels like saying the quiet part loud, or I'm just gonna have to spoon feed it to you. Again, that's to the audience. And
Right.
you shouldn't be making a virtue of having to do that. You shouldn't be trying to disguise your bad writing like that. And there was a bunch of them in the opening scene. I don't want to relitigate that, but you know, he turns to someone and say, "It's a fake. It's a reproduction with his digital face."
I know, yeah. It's not good.
It's not good. No, it's like, oh, you know your shortcomings. That's even worse.
Well, see, what I worried about in that moment was that they never even picked up on it.
I
They
noticed
don't
it both
understand.
times. I noticed it both times I watched it. I noticed that line both times I watched it. So
Yeah.
I'm on the fence whether they know it or not. I think I don't think it's I don't think it's like self-reference. I think it's just like we know we're doing a bad job and it's gonna leak out in the script somewhere, kind of subconsciously. I gotta we always talk about this, that whatever the lesson is in a classroom scene is gonna be relevant to the movie, but
Yeah, well,
this takes it
this takes
to
the cake.
another extreme where it's so, because the thing about X marks the spot was that you can imagine Indy says that in every lesson, that it's just like a recurring catchphrase. It's like, remember, X never marks the spot.
Right.
He doesn't cover the siege of Syracuse in every lesson, right? This is a massive coincidence. Probably the biggest in history.
Sure.
That he's about to go on this adventure that involves exactly what he is talking about. Word for word.
Yeah, it's a good thing that Helena sat in on this lesson and not yesterday's lesson or the next day's lesson or the next class's lesson.
And again, the movie is sort of pushing the line that this is a math science based fantasy storyline. Focusing on Archimedes, and again a rebuttal to the ancient aliens theory of Crystal Skull, because it's very much like people from ancient civilizations, non-American civilizations, had this all figured out prior to modern Western civilization. So it's the opposite viewpoint from aliens did it. And I like how they're kind of speaking to your point about he's looking into the past and everyone else is looking to the future. He gets the TV set is wheeled in by the AV Club,
right?
And,
yeah,
and it's like,
shut up, old man! Stop talking about history.
And it's literally just like you're being replaced by a TV set,
totally,
which is talking about astronauts, and we only saw TV briefly in the last film, just in the fake nuclear suburb, but to just show that we're past TV, we're post TV. But it's good that we have it again, and it's so important to everyone because I think it was like 49 to 59 was when television became a mass medium. So by 69.
69, yeah.
And obviously the moon landings were one of those huge broadcast events that's going to keep television going for decades.
Yeah.
So it's a nice moment there, and he just has to stand there and take it. Another clock. He gets a gold clock for his retirement.
Sure.
I thought Spielberg laid on the visual symbolism thickly, but Jay's got nothing on James Mangold. There's more clocks than scenes in this movie. This is where it looks like Indiana Jones is going to walk into a digital background when he comes out of his office and he gives the gold clock to the
homeless guy. Yeah.
That background is so badly integrated into the shot.
That one you're right about. Yeah.
Whew.
I like when he goes into the bar and Helena shows up, Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Well, she's been stalking him.
She's been stalking him, but I like that he says, "Whatever I did, I apologize." Because he kind of just throws it away behind him, like it's something he has to do all the time now. For all he knows, this could be his child with Willie Scott. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's how big an asshole he's been in the past, where he just, like, someone says hello to him and he blanket has to say, "Whatever it is, I apologize."
But does this movie think like you're thinking? Like, do they think of him as an asshole, or do they just think...
No, I don't think so.
Since he's lost, since his marriage is broken up and his son died, that he...
I think that's what they think it is, yeah. But I make the other connection.
I make the other... I made that connection because I know this movie, but I know the level that this movie's working at. But I agree with you that that's a good line if you interpret it the way you just interpreted it. So I will choose to interpret it that way from now on. Thank you.
Perfect.
But so Helena's been stalking him. She's been at his retirement. When the film came out, I didn't buy into the idea that she was being established as a surrogate Indiana Jones, because it's so easily attached to that toxic fandom of, we don't want women, we don't want diversity in our movies. We don't want we don't want woke choices. All that nonsense.
Yeah.
Like it bleeds so easily into that. But I gotta say, watching it second time round and kind of noticing that everything is about passing the gauntlet on to her.
That's what I noticed this viewing as well.
So much so that if you go on the Disney Plus title page for this movie, it's not Harrison Ford, it's her.
It's her
and I was
walking
like,
across
I assume
the bridge,
they change those up every so often, but I was watching it the day the movie was released.
Yeah.
And the sort of the joke that's gone around is, it's Helena Shaw and the Dial of Destiny, and I've always sort of scoffed at that. But watching it this time, I'm like,
I really noticed it on this viewing.
I think they're trying to do that in the movie, and I think retrospectively they might be trying to do that with publicity.
Well, I don't know. I'm of two minds about that, because
I mean, they walk it back again.
Right.
Just like Mutt, they walk it back.
They walk it back.
Yeah.
So there's that. On top of it, I wonder how much of what she's doing, say jumping onto the trunks of cars,
she does a lot of that.
It feels like it's a byproduct of, well, we'd rather have Indiana doing this. Like, if Harrison Ford wasn't 80, he'd do it. But he's 80, so she'll do it. That's what it felt like to me. It didn't feel
even like that in the
it didn't feel like a real purposeful passing of the gauntlet to her. But it should have been, because it's there. It's in there.
Yeah.
It's woven into the fabric of the story, but to me it's not deliberate enough.
Okay. They're not just doing it with her. I mean, in the opening scene, they do. Basil's the one who shoots the Nazi. And you can't help but think in an earlier movie that, I mean, he's not supposed to, Basil's supposed to be older than him at that point, so it doesn't really make sense. But it's just like, it's setting you up for a movie where Indiana Jones is not gonna do much, and he's not gonna be the one who seals the deal on every action scene. And it's a strange.
But there are also some. Well,
again,
maybe I'll save it.
But you're absolutely right. It's about managing the problem of having an 80-year-old man as your action hero.
Yeah. That's what it felt like to me.
But no one's thinking about the logic of doing that. This is something that was not publicized, and obviously would have not been publicized, that one of the people who wrote Crystal Skull wrote this movie. And I see a lot of continuities from the like David Cope co-wrote this movie and Crystal Skull, and that's never been talked about. It's so interesting. But they're continuing that subversive commentary of, I guess, the last two films. We've had it since Donovan, right, where the Americans are Nazi collaborators, and
this is strange to me, this choice of the movie. I guess because that this was probably this was involved. That some Germans came over here, that they helped us with some things, that maybe some of them were unsavory. But with my idea of recorded history, it wasn't just one guy.
No, absolutely. Well, this is the other problem, is that it's only this movie and Crystal Skull that link the micro history that happens in the Indiana Jones films to larger historical events. Like, it's revealed that Voller, who is the character that we meet in the opening, in the interim has put astronauts on the moon. Yeah. And of course, Crystal Skull, there's interaction with Area 51. But in the previous Indiana Jones movies, even though we're alluding to the history around what was happening in this period, nothing they did affected anything on a geopolitical scale. But
yeah, exactly.
In both these movies, the discovery of aliens in American culture has an alien event. We go to space. Those are two big things that characters in our movies contributed to the point where if you take them out of the equation, these things wouldn't have happened.
Right, exactly.
So it's a bigger move than they probably think it is to say that, oh yeah, he put astronauts on the moon.
And not to mention, he's working with one CIA agent, and then clearly other Nazis that I guess the CIA just hasn't picked up on. But they all seem so clearly villainous that...
Well,
thanks for getting us to the moon. Now we're going to put you in jail, is what I would say,
And it's a continuation. Go from Donovan to the idea of the witch hunt, the anti-communist witch hunt in Crystal Skull, which is done with subtlety and nuance. This isn't here. It's just like those on the right wing side of American politics have decided to become Nazis, and it's really interesting that the people who defend this movie. I remember there was a conversation online. Someone had put out, it's like, I can't believe we have to keep going back to the well of Nazis. And the cartoonist Joe Data, who writes for the New Yorker, kind of responded, like, are you talking about America or the movie? And I'm like, fair point. Yeah. America hasn't moved beyond neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
Why should these movies?
Why should Indiana Jones?
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, I think there's a way in which they could have just been fascists instead of Nazis. Having them, I mean, I know they're having them dress up in Nazi uniforms. I get the story reason for that, because they think they're going back to Nazi Germany. Although by that point, it's cuckoo bananas anyway. But they could have turned up in fucking, dressed as cheese puffs. It would have made as much sense. But
put your Teletubby costume on. I said, Schnell.
But I think the way that Crystal Skull explores it, where you just get this sense of, we fought this war, and it still seems like there's a lot of fascism in America that needs to be taken care of. I'd like this movie to kind of go on that level and not just like, you know, there are a bunch of Nazis who want to take, you know, it's like the American intelligence elite is infiltrated,
who clearly
by Nazis.
who clearly want to take over and rewrite history.
Yeah,
and you're gonna help them do it.
But I'm in two minds.
The government, yeah.
Because one of the things that is lost here from not having Lucas and Spielberg is the dimension of making movies not just set in the period of history, but also in the period of cinema. Because this doesn't feel like a late 60s, early 70s movie.
That was the other thing for me that because you gave so much play about the 50s and the idea of aliens. And
there's not that intentionality here.
That intentionality is not in this movie. It's not.
But the Nazi choice is is a flavor of that. You know, movies like The Boys from Brazil and They Saved Hitler's Brain. I don't know if that's real or that's a Simpsons pastiche, but
I don't know.
But yeah, there were a lot of those movies around that time about ex-Nazis hiding out in South America trying to reanimate Hitler, and I guess there's a lot of crossover here. But it's still they certainly haven't captured the feel of what it would be like, you know, the new Hollywood essentially.
Right.
You know, the beginnings of new Hollywood, Easy Rider, Butch Cassidy, and like there's when he's on the subway, there's a little French connect. It's a little bit French connection-y. There's a little bit of Planet of the Apes when he gets on the horse, but. Apart from that, I'm reaching because I think they just forget to add that dimension in.
I think so too. I think, you know, they're just not playing on that level.
I mean, they do it with the Bond movies because being set in the 60s or the late 60s frees them up to put actual Bond imagery on screen, and there's a couple of times that they do that. Obviously, with this CIA agent we're about to meet. I mean, she looks exactly like Rosie Carter from Live and Let Die, and I don't think that's an accident. Mm-hmm. But, again, it's really just that. Never mind.
See, I think it could be an accident.
I don't think that was an accident, no. It's just that's too close. To quote Lando. Too close. I don't like how this African-American actor is...
okay, that's my next note. I was like,
why put on display for us to be racially abused?
Why do we have the antagonism of this poor black hotel worker?
Because this is again, it's like the cynical thought. It's like, oh, we'll do diversity by having a scene about racism. It's like, no, diversity is when you put black actors in your people of color in your movie because you think that they'd be right for the role, not because you want for them to stand there and take racist
and take abuse.
And what it doesn't add anything.
Doesn't add anything.
We know he's a
Nazi. We think we understand what his views are.
He's more right wing than Hitler.
Oh my God.
This has been established. He's a critic of Hitler. It's like those people who say
Hitler
Trump
got it wrong.
Yeah, it's like people who say Trump doesn't go far enough.
Yeah.
And they're really laying on the sort of passing the gauntlet stuff in the scene between Helena and
I noticed that too.
I just graduated in archaeology. Mm-hmm. It's like even more than Mutt, I think.
No, I agree.
She's taking over. I like that they do a non-verbal reference to Henry's Grail obsession. I don't like that they feel like they have to follow it up with dialogue. So mid-scene, she mentions, you know,
all of her fathers.
Chasing your father's obsession, and Indy does a look.
Yeah.
Which is like, and because Harrison Ford's so good, it's like the whole of Last Crusade flashes before his eyes in a second.
Right.
That is all you need. But by the end of the scene, you know, it says he has to say, why would you spend your life trying to following your father's obsession? She's like, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I did.
Yeah.
The reference is so clear just by that look.
Yeah.
And you've hired an actor who can fucking do that with just a sideways glance. Why do you need more than that?
but she has to add the dialogue of including, let's, come on, one more time. You're going to go out with a bang, back in the saddle.
She talks in meaningless buzzwords throughout the scene. It's
Yeah.
like every piece of her dialogue comes from the original pitch for the movie.
Yeah, right.
And they do overlapping exposition, which I think they think gets it done faster and makes it clearer. But it must be distracting because I didn't remember any of this.
Oh, I think they think it shows some kind of chemistry.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes chemistry is nonverbal as well.
Sure.
But you wouldn't know it.
I also have this note because, so after that scene, Indiana just takes her to the dial. So the MacGuffin is half the dial. But it just, it feels like the MacGuffin is just sitting somewhere where Indiana knows where it is. He's like, here it is. There you go.
And again, you have to retcon so much to suspend disbelief that Indy has a lifelong commitment to this many artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
And now because you've moved him to New York, that means he's been taking this with him wherever he
Right.
he goes. And we know he's moved. He's done one big move from. Where are they in? Where's Marshall College? It's like,
I don't
is
know.
it supposed to be New England or something like that? But it's not New York, right? He's got to make a move. So he had to source a place that he could hide this MacGuffin, along with all the other MacGuffins that he's across the Coronado. Well, no, that's the thing. In previous movies, it's easy because it goes, Marcus, here's
Take
the MacGuffin.
this.
But this one, he's been moving whenever he moves house.
Yeah.
It's I mean, he's moved house at least 3 times since the beginning of Raiders. Oh, it's just, this is one of the moments where I thought, actually, if Crystal Skull didn't exist, this would be a nice callback to the warehouse in Raiders.
I had that thought.
The sort of the
It's his
modernist
own
version of
personal.
that.
Yeah, it's his own personal warehouse.
And they
I
could
had
have
that note.
They could have afforded, if they hadn't already burned it, to do the na 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 kind of sound.
Right.
But they can't because Crystal Skull fucked that up for them. And this is where we get the idea that this is going to be a time travel movie, because they talk about
Predicting the fissures in time.
Fissures in time. And I'm not sure what I like least, that we're doing time travel or that Indy doesn't believe that time travel's possible after all he's seen.
No. There's this. I don't think it's much later in the movie, but when he has that line about, I don't believe in magic, but there's a couple times in my life, I'm like, more than a couple, Indy.
More
you should
than a couple?
absolutely believe in all types of magic based on your life experience.
Your mind should be sufficiently open now for you to entertain the possibility of time travel.
Oh my God.
I want to talk, because I don't know if you...
May I remind you watched Interdimensional Beings Fly Away.
Okay, fair enough. Oh yeah, I know. I thought that was an attack on me. That was an attack on him.
That's an attack on him.
But I'm showing my the weaknesses of my argument there.
I like that you thought it would automatically be an attack on you.
Well, no, I was
means
just
I'm doing my job right.
I was just like, but I'm gonna go. We're post interdimensional beings, so how much can I actually go after time travel? But I wanted to bring up that very subject because I don't know if you realize how much of a setup it was when we did a watch along of Young Indiana Jones earlier on this year.
Okay.
But I just wanted to have all our... I chose it specifically because I wanted all our predictions about Dial of Destiny to be on record in case any of them came true. We could go back to them and look very smart and, clever.
I don't remember.
Time travel was already out there in the ether. We'd seen photos of Roman soldiers fighting. I headcanoned it that this was going to be part of like a prelude where, you see the origins of the Dial of Destiny and you see it like pass between different people's hands over history, and there wasn't going to be any time travel involved. But I knew there was a possibility. If that shot exists, then there could also be time travel.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember mentioning time travel out loud, and you were like, "No, they can't do that. They can't. They're not going to do that." And in the back of my mind, I was like, I was like, oh,
I can't
that-
wait
I
to
felt
shove
really...
it in his face
No,
like
no,
a
no.
pie.
The total opposite. I was like, oh, I feel really bad for you because I've accepted that it's a distinct possibility, even though I don't want it to happen. But you're not even at that stage of acceptance yet. You're
No,
still
yeah,
at the denial
like,
stage.
I'm like
You're still at the
Indiana
denial
Jones in
stage
this
of grief.
movie. I'm like
You're at the
Indiana Jones in this
Yeah.
movie.
You're at the denial stage of grief. So
Grief, yes.
yeah. But anyway, we'll talk about how the time travel. But I just wanted to let you know that was a big setup.
That's great.
2 or more of the university staff are murdered,
Yes.
and I don't
How
know how
this
I feel
little miniature plot line that Indiana Jones is going to be blamed for this murder
Yeah.
that lasts for about 15 minutes is sort of beyond me.
It's the fugitive. I mean, it's the fugitive.
It's
Essentially.
totally the fugitive, but he's, they record those calls. I think even in 1969,
Yeah.
they were probably recording 911 calls. Right? Because
I
he's on the
Yeah.
phone when somebody says, "Put that phone down."
I'd have to look at that Dragnet reboot in the 60s and see
Yeah.
what the situation was, but I expect so. But it's interesting because again, there's a cold-blooded turn in each of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like even when you don't quite expect it, like the 3 guys getting shot back to back, you're just like,
Yeah.
whoa, that's dark.
You're like, well, at least they're Nazis.
And then there's the whole second act of Temple of Doom. But this just seems gratuitous and unconnected in a way that those don't for some
Yeah.
reason. Like it's like this comes out of left field. And I remember listening to podcaster Matt Myra talking about it, and this was one of his least favorite parts of the movie that these people were just kind of ruthlessly murdered without any kind of concern.
The
for them
movie
as
sacrifices them for
Yeah.
no good reason.
And I feel hypocritical. I feel exactly the same, but I feel hypocritical thinking that looking back to
At the rest of the movies,
Last
yeah.
Crusade, and of course most of Temple of Doom. But nonetheless, I do think there's a disconnect
There, I think, yeah.
that makes this feel more callous
Mm-hmm.
than those scenes. Bearing in mind, I realize a guy has a heart pulled out of his body and it sets on fire. I mean, put
I'm
it
not
in
denying
context.
that.
Yeah, I'm not denying that happened, even
That
though
was
I
an
never
innocent man.
even though I didn't see it until I moved to America.
Right.
But so yeah, and with all the kind of the CIA traitors, and now it's revealed that Helena's deceiving Indy, we've not solved the Mac problem.
Right.
We're still having characters going back and forth in terms of trust with Indy throughout the movie.
At
So
least
if
he's
you were-
kind
if
of
you were
behind
trying
the
to
8 ball
resolve-
again with
Yeah.
Helena,
Yeah, he doesn't see it coming.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
But
And we have a golden Iraq fall.
So yeah, I wrote down Old Man Shelf Escape. And
That sounds like a dance that was popular for a very short amount of time. Everybody do
short.
the old man shelf escape.
for one weekend, everybody was doing the Old Man Shelf Escape. But it also felt like it's one of those things where, these Nazis had just shot 2 innocent people, at least 2.
Yeah, I think more.
And then they find Indiana Jones. There's no sense that at this moment in time, Voller thinks he needs him.
Well, he doesn't even know the Dr. Jones is...
Or he's not in the room yet, right? Is
No,
he still back
Voller's
back at the hotel.
Voller's
So it's
still
just
in his hotel room
it's
insulting
just the
African-American
henchmen.
waiters.
Yeah. It's just the henchmen. By the way, the henchmen, sorry to say it to what's his name?
Boyd Holbrook.
Yeah, Boyd Holbrook. Just kind of a lackluster
Have
henchman.
Have you seen the honest trailer for this movie?
No.
Take a look, because I haven't seen enough of the films to know, but Boyd Holbrook is notorious for being the least liked character in every franchise reboot over the past 10 years, and the evidence is staggering. I mean,
Is that how
remember,
people feel about him in Logan?
and Justified.
Mm.
He was the surrogate Walton Goggins in the Justified reboot. And the evidence is staggering. I don't want to, this. I feel like this guy.
You don't need to pile on.
I don't need to pile on, and it's like he's trying to work in a moment in American cinema where characters just get eaten up and spit out. So it's not really his fault, but it is kind of interesting that this movie is kind of fitting into that franchise pattern of all the new characters are garbage, and we have no interest or investment in any of them.
Yeah,
and you've already talked about surrogate Pat Roach,
right?
Or as I call him, not Roach.
When I look at the not Roach of this movie, I keep thinking to myself, what's his name? Oliver Richters, I think. Hawk.
Sure. Yeah.
All I keep thinking is that a CGI person? Because he doesn't look real.
He's a man created by mirrors. That's the thing. Like, the irony of this is we're going to find out that all the backgrounds are real, but the people are fake.
But the people are fake. Oh my.
God. That is
anyway,
incredible.
My overall point was when they come into Indy's warehouse and he does the old man shelf escape.
Yeah.
It would have been so easy for them to just shoot him. He's just standing on top of that perch for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And these are the limitations of kind of dealing with an 80-year-old man, I think.
Well, speaking
and the movie isn't solving that problem well all the time.
And it doesn't help with the cross-cutting that they do, because Helena's like jumping over rooftops.
But not super nimble.
No, but she's doing all the adventuring. And we see Indiana Jones scrambling to use a phone.
I know. What is this thing?
Yeah, I'm used to the one where you speak, you pick up the receiver.
You pick up, yeah, exactly.
Give me Klondike 4, and
yes.
Oh,
mercy.
And so, yeah, he has another bag on his head.
Mm-hmm.
Because James Mangold wants you to think they did that for aesthetic reasons, not because they didn't want to have to work.
Couldn't show his shitty face.
Yeah. He gets dragged into a Vietnam War protest, which is the second protest we've had in 2 movies.
Mm-hmm.
That an action scene leads into.
Right.
But it's like this movie's pretty good about showing, because that protest was like anti-communist. This is not pro-communist, but pro ending the Vietnam War, and which is fighting communism. So
yeah,
it shows the kind of the shifting of the cultural goalposts in American youth since then.
Right. But then we're about to meet our second African American character, who's gonna get quickly shot.
And do you hear him get shot off screen, or did I Mandela affect that?
No, I think you do.
I was listening for that this time, and I didn't hear it.
Really? Damn it!
I might have been because this.
I might have Mandela affected it as well. I might have just put it in there because it felt like something this movie would do.
But this is the problem with this scene, because it's so The Fugitive that I start to drift, and and I'm just thinking, if you've got Harrison Ford on the run in a tweed jacket with his collar turned up, bagpipers and a parade, why not set this movie in Chicago? I mean, if you've gone that far. And then I wouldn't like to see what they did with CGI Chicago. CGI Cargo.
Yeah,
no,
right? No. Did you notice? Because I don't think I remember noticing this on my first viewing in the theaters, which seems like it would have been more prevalent there. But there are moments when he's on that horse where you're seeing CGI Harrison Ford old man face on that horse.
Yeah, I mean, the the unfinished effects of Crystal Skull. If this is the finished version, then
They're no better.
There's no point finishing them.
Yeah.
Because the matching of foreground to backgrounds, I don't know if it's a byproduct of that or whether they've digitalized his face, but it looks horrible. And again, it's like forcing the action language of past movies, even when it's incongruous to the milieu you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in the city, but he's on a horse. There's a bike chase, but we're in the city.
Right.
It's like, I mean, you've made this change. Why not do something urban? Why not have a car chase? Why not have a subway pursuit? I mean, they do, but he's on a horse.
Yeah.
I get, there are police horses around, I suppose, but that's a bit of a leap that would be your go-to action sequence to do in the middle of New York City, isn't it? I'd want more taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3 kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I think you also get in, like, when you start taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, what they needed was 2.5 minutes of subway work. So you can't get into a hostage situation.
No, I just mean that I don't know what I mean. I mean the French Connection or something like that.
Right. We already had one scene of moving up and down a train. So you don't want to repeat that into the subway scene.
Well, we're repeating bikes.
True.
And we'll repeat bikes and cars endlessly throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
The only original vehicle we get is a tuk-tuk.
Tuk-tuk.
Which is not original because it comes from Octopussy, but original for this film. Anything from a Bond film that this movie steals is their idea of what's original.
That's a scathing indictment.
Not really. It's actually one of the preferable qualities of this movie. Like when the racks, when the shelves all fall down, I'm like, GoldenEye! GoldenEye. All of this horse in the subway stuff would be exponentially better if it was all action, no words.
Sure, yeah.
Hold my horse, subway's faster. There's more fugitive. He gets recognized from the TV image of him, which is straight out. Yeah, straight out of, and he's wearing the same jacket that he wears in that scene.
It does look like it, doesn't it?
With the collar turned up.
With the collar turned up, he looks so
too close.
Fugitive.
Too close.
And the TV moment is the same as the newspaper moment on the subway.
Exactly the same,
Fugitive. Yeah.
This is where we
got Sala back.
We re-meet Sala. And we'd have to do a lot of legwork to explain why Sala is now a cab driver in New York. Which, when you're going to Morocco after this,
right? Totally
seems a strange choice.
But when you watch Sala run to his taxi cab,
yeah,
and then you see him drop Indy off at the airport and says, "And how about I go with you one more time?" And he's like, it's not just Indiana, it's the movie saying, you can't keep up. Like, Harrison Ford can barely keep up. I apologize. You have to leave the movie. Good day to you, sir.
But why do they even bring it up? Why isn't it just understood between the characters that he's going to help him escape, but he's not going to go with him?
Oh, I agree with you completely.
Why do we have to have this whole scene about, like, I brought my passport and I'm coming with you? And
every scene in this movie is anywhere from 1 to 18 minutes too long.
Yeah.
Every scene.
Yeah, like he has to, and we can directly compare it to the Marcus. Either Marcus doesn't come and nobody says anything.
Right.
He just goes, nah, I'm going to choose not to come.
Or
he invites himself. He's just like, make that 2. I don't remember inviting you, but okay. But here it's sort of like this sort of weird back and forth of... actually, this is a better scene than in the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, the scene, first of all, that he takes him back to his home. We're introduced to his
Family.
grandchildren, because Sal always has to be surrounded by children.
Mm-hmm.
He's dispensing Moroccan facts seemingly arbitrarily.
Sure.
And we're like, probably going to have to pay attention to some of this. Is probably going to matter at some point.
The movie has not brought up what's going on with Indiana Jones's personal life, really,
No.
until this moment. And this moment is all you need. I'll give the movie this moment where he says, "Why don't you call Marion?" and she doesn't want to talk to
yeah,
me.
that's right. Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's all the information I need. I'll just use that as a note for a scene that's coming up later.
Yeah. I would have killed her off, but
I know you would have. You callous bastard.
no. I'm just, I don't think the movie they want to make. I don't think there's a place for her, or Mutt, and
Right.
so
I also have a note
they
for
shouldn't be.
Sala.
Neither of them should be part of the plot, if that's the case. But
I
yeah,
have a
no,
note- I have a note for
what-
Sala. Don't yell the criminal's name as he's getting onto an airplane.
so I'm trying to figure out.
Just
and they
because
don't
you
make,
want it to be in the trailer.
they don't make this clear, but this time I noticed again, a la The Fugitive, that he seems to have made like a fake passport for him. There's like a passport and some like scissors and
Oh, is that right?
on the table.
I didn't notice that.
Because I was saying, yeah, by 1969, it's no problem to call the airport and go, "Don't let a man called Henry Jones on the flight,
Right.
who looks like an 80-year-old Harrison Ford." That you think that would be pretty easy. So I think he's there with a fake passport.
All right.
But it's not clear. It's not clear at all. But again, I
No.
think they're just thinking, people will just assume he did the thing in The Fugitive with the fake ID.
Yeah.
Where you at, Desmondo?
Well, when he gets on that airplane,
Well, I want to talk. I just the so I just because it's a plus and a sea of negatives. I like the way that scene. I quite like the monologue, although by the time I saw the movie, I was sick of it because it had been in the trailer.
Mhm.
In fact, most of the trailer is this scene. But I like the button of he does the sort of the fanfare moment, which is for the purposes of the trailer. I acknowledge, give 'em hell, Indiana Jones, but that it leads to Indy like nearly getting run over by a cab,
yeah, right.
and then the cut back to a very sheepish looking
Sala.
Sala. I was like, that's good. That's the kind of like sloppy Indy
That you'd want
and
to
his
see.
and
Yeah,
his
all right.
and his sloppy allies. I like to see, and I like that was the. I'm glad that they didn't end it on the fist raising moment, and that they
Yeah.
undercut it a little bit. That was nice.
I'll give him that.
And I quite like I like the monologue as written, but the choice to kind of have him do that monologue, and then Indy says, "No, you can't come with me." I'm like, well, why even bother doing that monologue if he's not going to go with you?
Yeah, right. Poor guy.
Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because once you get on this airplane, this is the moment. This is what's wrong with movies today.
We've called Harrison Ford an old man yelling at a cloud. Now we want to join in.
Yeah. 2, maybe 3 times when he's talking to Helena, he asks her, "Do you remember the last time you saw me?"
That's right. Yeah.
That's all I need. The scene that they choose to show you in flashback on this airplane, I already had built in my mind. I didn't need to see it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's unnecessary for several reasons. Because they make the decision to go down the de-aging well again.
Yeah.
But they're not aging up
Toby
Jones.
Yeah.
Which meant that, again, no consistency, right? There's no who
No
gets
internal
de-aged.
logic.
No internal logic. And again, the scene is there to sort of push the science point again, proving it is what makes it science.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives the idea that just because Toby Jones comes up with a bunch of dates, that's somehow science.
Yes,
That's not
right.
science. That's just writing down dates in a fictional movie.
Not to mention, who decides that something is evil, something can cause harm, something is terrible, and then gives it to someone else, but says it must be destroyed? If you're that passionate about
he's
it,
his lifelong
you
friend.
destroy
He
it.
trusts him. By the way, that trust wouldn't have been impacted by them having met on that mission.
No, not at all.
Because they still go back, like, what, 20
Yeah.
20 years at that point?
Mhm.
Or what it... So this is Crystal Skull. I mean, it's also... I tell you what is also inconsistent. I don't know how they got this wrong. That, like, they're not even looking back at the... at the how he looked in movies set in previous eras when they de-age him, because when in the he looks pre-Temple when you first see that de-aged Harrison Ford, and he's supposed to be post-Crusade.
Yeah, right.
And then when you see him here, as far as I can tell in the timeline, this is about the time of Crystal Skull.
You think?
But he looks more like he does in The Fugitive.
Yeah.
Well, she's 12, so... Well, how old is Helena? Because she's 12 there, that's all we know.
You mean when she's Phoebe Waller? How old is she?
Oh, so I guess it is more Fugitive time. Oh, okay, disregard that.
Okay, fine.
I was right first time. It's what lies beneath Harrison Ford, which you don't need to de-age. But anyway.
Yeah. That de-aged look better than the other one, though.
I disagree. I think it's the worst thing I've ever seen in a movie.
Worse than the young one?
Yeah.
Ooh,
That
not
looked
for
better
me.
to me this time.
Really?
I think it was the smaller screen and the extra fiddling they've done.
It looked worse to me than when I saw it on the big screen.
We knew this was going to happen. We knew we were going to go back to it.
We're
and
reversing.
I was going to like some things better, and you were going to like some things worse, and we would meet in the middle.
That's great.
We predicted it. So they get to Morocco. Oh, he gets to Morocco. No, they get to Morocco. Are they
get
on
to
the same plane? Who fucking cares?
It
The
doesn't
movie
matter. They get to the set of Morocco.
I assume they were going to meet on the plane, because why do we need the shot of Phoebe Waller-Bridge on a plane? Can't she just turn up in Morocco?
She does.
Yeah, but we see her on a plane going to Morocco.
Do we?
So it says like Royal something Airlines.
Well, they're
Yeah, we
definitely
do.
not on the same plane.
Then okay, never mind. I'm not going to start questioning these micro choices. That just assume they're all wrong, because they are.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is the first time we see Indiana Jones, the modern day 1969 Indiana Jones
In his costume.
in his costume, and he's doing the business casual look from Last
He's got-
Crusade,
yeah, he
which I
does.
think is a great choice
Yeah,
for the
that's right.
for the older gentleman.
Agreed.
And I like that it's introduced in this milieu because, well, first of all, is what time stands still when he gets in that costume, and even at 80,
Yeah.
it shaves more than the two. You know, they make the joke about it shaves 2 years off you, but it's way more than that. He does settle back into it, and it helps that they've gone with the business casual look, because that
He
is-
looks,
that is an older indie look.
but he
Although the
looks
last-
like he could be 70.
Although Crystal Skull, he's full on, Tom Jones.
Yeah, he's got
Open
Yeah. He
the whole
can still
time.
go full open chest
Yeah.
showing at for that movie.
And for a moment, everything feels right. Harrison Ford and the way
briefly.
he looks, very briefly. The bar in Morocco, I'm like, this feel, it's like, it looks like Morocco, it looks like the late 60s, or how we know, Morocco from late 60s movies.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the heritage of movies like Casablanca and the Humphrey Bogart of it all that played into the original representation of the characters. So I'm like, oh, just let me settle in. Let me breathe this in. This feels like an Indiana Jones movie. And then Helena's doing a fucking auction in another room.
Oh,
and then
boy.
there's this kid who's operating a fake airplane. And I'm like,
Yes.
why did you have to ruin it? I was so happy. I was so content just watching Space Ramon, Harrison Ford, and now look at the...
I agree with you completely. Listen, why don't we let you calm down? We'll take
Okay.
one last break.
Oh, I'm not going to calm down, but yes, we will take
And
a
then
break.
we'll come back because
Yeah.
we've got the set piece portion of this movie is going to start here, and it won't stop till it's done.
This is because this is the point at which you really get the sense they're trying to squeeze several Indiana Jones movies into one canvas.
Into one portion of the movie for sure.
One slightly too long movie that feels like it's about an hour longer than it is.
All right, we'll be right back. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. Here we are, finishing up with Dial of Destiny. I feel like we're really trashing this movie a lot.
Yeah, I tried. I mean, yeah, it is what it is.
It didn't raise in your estimation.
We'll see. We'll talk about that at the end.
All right. So anyway, yeah, we have this auction scene, and nothing has felt more like a scene designed to be comic and charming that was not, to me, than this scene.
Agreed.
And I felt a lot of, I think people talked about Phoebe Waller-Bridge, punching up some of the script. And this
This one?
just in general.
Okay.
But this scene felt like it was her dialogue to me. The whole bit about capitalism. I stole it, then I stole it, then I stole it, and that's capitalism.
Which is, I was struck at that moment. I was like, say what you like about Crystal Skull, but that countercultural commentary in that movie is far more nuanced than it is in this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in the dialogue.
Yeah, right.
It's in the subjects. Also, was it her idea to call him Jonesy? Because that leaves a bad taste in a mouth post-Mac.
Yeah, totally. I don't think I caught that the first time I saw it. And
No,
when she
me
said
neither.
Jonesy this time, I was like, oh.
It would have only been redeemed if Indy was like, "Don't ever call me that again."
Yeah.
That would have been great. It'd be like, enough said.
Oh,
Enough
man.
said. I mean, as soon as you see the kid with the plane,
You know what's going to happen at
Thing.
the end of this movie.
and this is exactly the kind of
And talk about
when we
more magical thinking.
right, but also when you actually look at it, you could have reverse engineered it better than that. But anyway, that's what they chose to go with. We have actually they did something as bad earlier on in the movie where they put the CIA supervisor on crutches for no other reason than he's slow to pick up on
Yeah.
the traders in his organization. That's the only reason he's on crutches, and it's that kind of writing. It's exactly what I'm talking about when we went back to when we talked about Last Crusade, when I said that rather than having him count in Latin at the beginning of the movie, they have him count in Greek, so that he knows classical languages, but it's not as on the nose as saying we've set up.
That
he
ends
knows
up playing
Latin,
at the
so
end
it'll
of
pay
this
off at the end of the movie. Sure, yeah, but I mean, this is literally like, you know, it's Chekhov's fake airplane, which is a phrase I never thought I'd need to come up with in my life. But everything, it's Chekhov's dynamite stick, Chekhov's lighter, Chekhov's bottle of
Sure.
booze. It's like nothing can just be what it is. And I find it's really, that was a moment where I was like, you screenwriters who fought a, you know, strike over several months to allow you to do this work, choose to
Right.
spend your time when you're actually allowed to do it writing this shit. Good on you for getting a great deal. Bad on you for fucking wasting that opportunity you have. And this is, it's really interesting. Like, there's moments in the movie where I'm like, they haven't done the thing that we need to do in Indiana Jones movies yet. And then a minute later, they'll pay lip service to it. And I'm like, they're thinking the same thing while they're reading the script. While they're writing the script, they're going, "Oh shit! I forgot to put in anything about him being a grave robber." Okay,
I'm
let's
not
have
a
a
grave
conversation
robber.
between him, and it is foolproof. Every single time I think of something that they forgot to do, it'll suddenly appear in a rushed,
As the bullets are flying.
begrudging, late fashion in the next scene. Because this whole scene, like, this is the scene where you could talk about him being a grave robber in the middle of this auction. And
But they do
never
it later when they get downstairs
I'm like,
and the bullets are flying.
but they
right.
do it later because they forgot. They missed their opportunity.
Well,
missed
and also,
the boat
you know,
on
there's
that
always
one.
a thing to me in Indiana Jones movies where Indiana Jones gets caught a lot or is in rooms with his enemies a lot. And in some of the movies, it seems like there's some heavy lifting going on to like why harm is not coming to Indiana Jones. And in other movies, it happens, you know, with the greatest of ease. Maybe it's because you have Steven Spielberg at your disposal.
I think that's what it is, and it's interesting because my note for this
Nonsensical,
action sequence
so
kind
stupid.
of comes out of the auction scene. It's so stupid, but it's choreographed like a dance
Mm-hmm.
with no visceral quality. So essentially, it's the opening
Yes,
of Temple
right.
of Doom without any teeth, right? Spielberg remembers to factor in the you know,
Right,
the
yeah.
vampire kebab or something that reminds you that actions have consequences. This just feels like, you know, we've choreographed this kind of action sequence. And
Well,
everyone's gonna
and
move
Spielberg
like
is
they're-
able
they're
to.
in a
I mean, maybe
Broadway
it's
show.
just the virtue of a bigger room too. But he, you know, Spielberg can. Yeah, Spielberg
need a
can.
bigger
You
room.
know, in Temple of Doom, it's you know, too much to drink, Dr. Jones, followed by the kebab, which you know brings about chaos.
Oh, don't
I know.
why
I'm
did you
sorry,
have to
but
remind me of that?
so when chaos starts
wrong with
in
you?
that movie, there's so much
watch that
that's
now.
there to protect Indiana Jones. And some of it is his own
Yeah.
doing. Ice falling on the floor, but the balloons that he does, the sword that he gets that drops the gong. Here they're all so enclosed. There's, you know, the idea of him using the
Yeah.
whip and backing off, and then the guns come out, and then they all shoot, but they like 12 guns miss him.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? They're all reloading so that he can get out of that room and watch Mads Mikkelsen go down in the elevator.
Yeah. And you know again, and we haven't talked about this yet, but the second half of the movie is where you really see it. But this movie, we said this off mic. This movie loves Temple of Doom,
I know.
and it makes me feel bad for James Mangold that he is so incapable of doing this because he believes in that movie in a way that Lucas and Spielberg don't, and is happy to put as many references to that movie in here as possible. And as you said, it's seemingly the only adventure that Indy remembers at any point. At any point in this movie. But from the opening scene, we get that, you know, when he's hanging in the floorboards, John Williams sprinkles in a little bit of the temple
Hanging
scene
of the
with
right.
hanging, you know, the whip on the ceiling fan. there's a lot of temple
Mhm.
lateral moves in these scenes. Like the gun, like where because they do, they reinvert the Indy pulling a gun on people.
Yeah.
So he whips them. They all pull out guns, which is a sort of a back and forth between does Indy pull a gun, or does he bring another weapon to the knife?
Sure.
I've been going back and forth with this throughout the movies, and it's good sloppy Indy, but it doesn't seem heroic. It just seems like, oh, this Indy is off the pace and out of his depth. Which is not the point that the original ones were making. They were just like, he's
Yeah.
a bit sloppy, but he gets the job done. This is like, oh, he's outmatched. What does that mean?
Not only is he
why
outmatched
am I
like
watching
brawn-wise,
this?
but it's like he's being outthought too. You know? And you don't want
Yeah.
that from your Indiana Jones.
Absolutely, yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
He's lost the heroism. And this subplot of the gangsters, which in retrospect I can see Salah was setting up when he's randomly dispensing facts about Morocco in his house, in his apartment. It just weighs down an already languid movie. Like when those, it's like I could not tell
What's
you who
going
those people
on,
are,
yeah,
what
like-
impact they have on the plot, and I know because of how the rest of this movie's gone.
Yes.
Don't commit. Don't invest.
Is it really not enough?
Just let it
that
happen?
They're chasing Mads Mikkelsen in the tuk tuk. Like we have to add the gangsters.
No, they have to. I have that exact same note of just like they have to be chased and they have to be chasing and be chased at the same time, and that's the best idea they've come up with. I mean, having said that, I think the tuk tuk chase of all the action, I know it's a low bar, but of all the action sequences in the movie, this is my favorite by far. I mean, it's just ripping from Octopussy, but
Well, I think it also is. It's not handled as well, but it reminds me of the chase in Crystal Skull, like on the college campus and that kind of stuff.
yeah, it's definitely it's closer to that than the rest of the set pieces in the movie. But the backgrounds are still terrible. I mean, this is where I had the thought that the backgrounds outside the tuk-tuks might as well be that Scooby-Doo rotating backdrop, when you see the same three people go by.
It would remind you a lot
Every
of
few seconds.
portions
It's like-
of the Indiana Jones ride had you been on it.
There you go.
But you don't want your movie to look like
No.
the ride.
You want it the other way around.
Yeah.
You want the roller coaster scene from Temple of Doom. And they're thinking in Bond terms about this action sequences because we get a donkey reaction shot at one point. But instead of the classic double take that we get in Moonraker from the pigeon, it's more of a, what do you want from me?
It's not my movie. I can't help you.
What do you want from me? One tuk-tuk goes one way, one goes the other.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
But this is where we get, this is when I was watching this scene, and as Helena started jumping on trunks and catching hands with guns or knives before they could get to her and slamming them on the trunk and that kind of thing. That's when I thought to myself, she's even got her own short round. And so
Yeah.
they're
they're trying to force a man, woman, child trio,
Yeah.
a la
Yeah.
Temple of Doom, but they're doing it in like the second, not even in the second hour of the movie, but like a good hour into the movie.
Mhm.
So, and she's, she comes across, and again, this is a problem when you cast someone who is a good actor, but make the wrong character choices. It's the same with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, because her character is made hateful in these scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And she, as an actor, knows how to do that. So she's extremely unlikable for about the next hour of the movie.
Because I also don't understand, you mentioned that speech earlier in the movie when Indiana Jones brings up, why would you be obsessed with what your dad was obsessed? And she says, wouldn't you? she doesn't seem obsessed at all. She wants to sell the dial. She's just about the bucks.
Yeah.
And so I
and
couldn't...
she seems to hate Indy and what he represents.
Yeah, right.
And she's duplicitous. It's like, it. You know, this in these scenes, she's just abusing him verbally. And not only do you not need to do that to suggest that that's what the character thinks about Indy, it really turns you off investing in the character.
Mm-hmm.
And she keeps fucking up as well. That's the other thing. It's like, even when they try and build in a redemption arc, it's a bumpy one.
Yeah.
Because she keeps making moral mistakes along the way.
Right.
Yeah, another bloated action sequence that is generally better than the others in the movie, but still pretty
Too long.
Too long.
Yeah.
We have the conversation about the Wright brothers, which I did like again because it gave me that young Indiana Jones flavor of, like, in every episode he meets a historical celebrity. So I did like the question of, did you meet the Wright brothers? And it's also a sense of, like, this is the movie's only way of trying to explain Indiana Jones to young people.
Right.
Through
yeah.
this kid. It's like, these are the questions that kids who don't understand why anyone cares about Indiana Jones might have. It's like,
Sure.
Did you hang out with the Wright brothers? And he's like, no, that was the Civil War. I was in the 1930s.
I realize I'm old. I'm not that old.
Yeah. And then they do again, like, they won't leave the Grail Diary comparisons alone because we have to do the inversion of Helena remembers everything that was in her father's notebooks as opposed to Henry's dad forgetting it all.
Because now she's...
And that's not a joke. Like,
she's
the
like
original
Ethan
was
Hunt.
a good joke.
Now she's like Ethan Hunt in the Mission Impossible series. I was like, what
I'll
the
take
fuck?
your word for it.
You'll
Does he
get
have a
to it.
photographic memory?
There's one of the movies at the end.
Does he have a conveniently photographic memory at
He
one point?
memorizes something that helps him in the plot. Yeah,
Excellent.
it's great.
And then we have a STEM puzzle in the middle of all this where
Yeah.
Indy plugs up the engine with chewing gum
Because
and
it's
explains-
got... Yeah.
So again, this movie's sort of like science works, everyone.
When
We're not science deniers just because we
Right.
have time travel in our movie.
He's got a bit of a MacGyver in him. But I remember as I was watching this movie, I thought, isn't time of the essence right now? Like, the fucking Nazis are getting on a goddamn plane. Aren't you hurrying? Why are we taking time fixing this fucking tuk-tuk? Just steal another one. You guys don't have any problem stealing people's vehicles.
In
But I
context
realized
of
it
this-
was only just to bring up that one point. It was for
Yeah.
the science thing.
And in the context of the experience of watching this movie, I was grateful for the breather, and I was grateful that we could have a bit of a character moment with Indy. But
Yeah,
but it's a byproduct. That's not why. And again, if you think one step further about why the scene's in there, you realize it's exactly as you portrayed it.
Yeah.
Something else that's done late and begrudgingly, the laser line map.
That's what I said. I wrote an hour and 13 minutes until the map is seen. Also, it's the worst map we've ever seen.
Well, it doesn't feel like James Mangold is invested in this technique.
No.
Which is crazy because it's, as we've said before, it's literally the only stylistic device that links all these
the
movies
films,
together.
right.
And he's it's a cartoon plane, the line's going south, the music
Yeah.
is like a public domain version of the Raiders theme.
Everything
It's
about it.
worse. I'll tell you what, it's worse than the
Everything
Treasure Buddies version of this.
Everything about it screams, I guess I have to do this.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And that should not be the level of enthusiasm about getting to make an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, totally.
Indy's got another lifelong friend.
He's got another lifelong friend. My note is, he doesn't meet, but he sees Antonio Banderas, and this movie has to show you that they're lifelong friends, and the only way they can do that is by having both of them constantly laugh.
Yep.
They're both going, ah, ha, 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 ha. And that's how you know they're the best of friends.
I remember, I think it was on Indiana Jones Minute where they were like, their reaction was, I really thought this was going to be Kananga.
That's what I thought.
As soon
And
as they met. As soon as they mention old friend and boat, but that would have really helped because then you don't have to do any of the work that they do in those scenes
Right.
to make it look like they like each other. It's like if you know that one guy saved the other,
Sure.
that is already that
It's
is
all
already
built in.
established. And the way way Antonio Banderas is introduced, it's as if we, the audience, are supposed to know who he is. And it's like, this movie
Yes.
goes from one extreme to the other. It's either all for the audience's benefit, or all for the benefit of the people on screen, excluding the audience.
Yeah. I remember thinking they're treating Antonio Banderas as if he's Kananga, but
Yeah.
not letting us in on that, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, yeah. On the other hand, Harrison Ford really knows how to wear a shirt.
Sure.
Because when he's on the boat, he gets the Egypt look from Raiders, which is one of his, I think, most attractive looks ever.
Yeah.
It's just shirts seem to hang on him in an iconic way.
Mhm.
Even now, he's still, he's that film star residue still oozes from him, I think.
Yeah.
But the crew, I mean, they look like they're out of Pirates of the Caribbean.
I know.
It's like if you go back to Raiders, when you see the crew on Kananga's boat, you're like, some of them look way too 1970s for this 1930s boat. Like there's a guy with like the cross
The band.
ammunition.
The
He looks like fucking B.A. Baracus. But this looks like a Disney cartoon. When there's that guy playing the accordion, I was like,
Right.
Is this a scene from Lady and the Tramp? What the fuck is going on?
It looks straight out of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride for sure.
Yeah. And then you get the scene that we've previously talked about
Yeah.
a few times in my life. They try and address the multi-faith aspects, the fact that he can believe both in a Hindu god and a Judeo-Christian god, and it's just semantics, right? They're just trying to talk around it with semantics if you don't actually get anywhere.
Right.
And then a moment that I know you said you quite enjoyed the first time you saw it, where he talks about Mutt.
I didn't say I liked the moment.
Mike, you're frozen. I think your Zoom is frozen.
I'm trying to remember. I don't think I said I liked the moment.
You said you liked his
What I said
acting.
was I liked his
Yeah.
performance overall. In his performance, it's funny you bring this up because the first time I watched this
You don't
movie,
feel that way anymore?
I thought you could read like his kind of depression throughout the whole movie. I didn't get it as much on this particular watching.
Interesting.
But
I got it more.
Did you?
I thought I was
think
like,
also because I really like connected
When-
to that the first time I saw it.
when he's
that-
in the archive, and he's talking about the he's giving the exposition of the Dial of Destiny
Mm-hmm.
to Helena. I was like, Harrison Ford sounds genuinely bored, and it is bumming me out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't think it's boredom with what he's doing. I think it's like that's where the movie has put the character, and he's
Right,
just
yeah.
playing along. And I had a similar feeling here. It's like you want me to invest in this bullshit Disney killed off Mutt thing. I'm gonna wring all the emotion out of it I can.
No. So I love his performance of the moment
Yeah.
in this scene, but having seen the thing earlier, the thing with Marion with Salah really hit me this time, and to me it was
Okay.
kind of like all you need. If you
Yeah, because they have a connection. The three of
Right.
them have a connection.
the
Yeah,
three of them have a connection,
they do.
and
It's true.
I liked the performance of it. To me, it felt a little too heavy-handed for the audience.
Yeah.
Like if you just
Agreed.
excised the scene and then you have a scene of merit at the end with Marion instead of what they have,
Yep. Yeah.
that's the moment to talk about Mutt.
I agree totally with
You
all
know?
of those changes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that Harrison Ford invests in the
Yeah.
grief.
In the grief, in the moment. I think I connected to this moment more on my first viewing and his performance of it. And his performance of it I still think is great.
Yeah.
But I recognized now that the scene doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, the whole plot line for me doesn't need to be there either.
Right. Yeah.
And that was one of our predictions. That was right. We said
You
Mutt
feel-
was going to be in Vietnam in that episode.
Did
Not
we?
watch along. You did, yeah.
Fantastic.
As soon as I heard it was set in '69, I was like, "Oh, that's how Disney are going to kill off Mutt
Mm-hmm.
to satiate the fans' thirst for blood." And that's exactly what they did.
And they did.
And they did. Snake phobia moment of the movie,
Eels, baby. Eels.
but with eels. They look like snakes. No, they don't. Which I think is the same joke as Crystal Skull, isn't it? It's the same snake joke as Crystal Skull.
kind of.
basically.
It's call it a
as
rope.
long as I don't think of them as snakes, they're not snakes.
Yeah.
Which they're not snakes.
In point of fact.
In point of not snakes. In point of fact.
Yeah.
Where's Oxley? Oh, John Hurt's dead, so it doesn't matter. Where's his statue?
Yeah.
And then they go back to the thing that didn't work in Temple of Doom, which is the real-time set piece.
Yes, that's my note. I was
3
like, what?
minutes.
Why are you giving yourself this artificial 3-minute clock when you're gonna go way over the 3 minutes?
Yeah, they go over it. They go over it by a minute.
I also don't like this idea of parachuting up so quickly in the water. I
Dig
think
up,
that
stupid.
as I understand it, thanks to Jaws 2, you can't rise too fast.
Well, then, I don't think we could use that as a counterpoint, can we?
I don't think you
That's
can
just
rise
the
that
blind
fast
reading the blind.
without causing some damage to your body.
To be fair, it's only Antonio Banderas who we have no knowledge about, like his background, so we don't know whether he knows anything about diving or not.
True. Yeah.
Could just be his. He might have the bend. He might have the bends and then think that because he has the bends.
Right.
And obviously, I mean, just what this overlong movie needed was an underwater sequence at this point. So
Your distaste of underwater.
it's in
must
the
have-
tradition. Yeah, it's in
must
the
have bothered
tradition
you.
of. It's in the tradition of taking taking not just the best of Bond, but also the worst of it.
Right.
Eel Strike is very underwhelming to look at.
Yeah.
I think even less so than Crystal Skull do they realize how ineffective creepy crawlies are going to look in CGI in this movie. Maybe.
Well,
bad as.
certainly in a scene coming up, more so, I think, even than the eels.
The centipedes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when they
Again,
get back on
like
the boat,
Spielberg just knows. Just get a bunch of bugs.
it's back on the boat. It's pure eyes only. It's like James Mangold. So James Mangold's relationship to James Bond, I think, is different from Lucas and Spielberg. I think he's the guy who watched early '80s Roger Moore Bond movies on a loop on HBO.
Great.
And they Wuhan Ronaldo,
Yeah.
who is the character Antonio Banderas plays. I had to look
Yes,
that up.
Riz, yes.
Again, they've not learnt their lesson of how to turn a cameo into a beloved character. because
Yeah.
You feel nothing when he dies, and
I'm-
again, Wuhan had even less screen time, and we still cared about him dying.
Well, I'll save it for about 2 minutes, but the moment that comes up after this boat scene, addressing that specific issue, he's like, "Hey, a friend of mine just died."
It's
And
that's
she
a line
just
from
says-
The Simpsons, isn't it? Mom, a man just died.
Yeah. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge has to say, "Sorry." So anyway, but that's what happens when your movie's, moving
Douse
this
that
fast.
artifact in booze and set it on
when
fire.
your movie's moving this fast between set pieces, and then it's so funny too because, again, it just kind of feels like a Phoebe Waller-Bridge kind of, pump up scene, like a little, like something she had her hands on about her little ingenious speech where she gets to be funny and smart
Oh,
and
it's
and
tedious.
have a stick of dynamite. It's just too much.
Yeah.
Chekhov's dynamite, Chekhov's lighter, Chekhov's booze.
Yeah.
Also, so it's like, it's no fun to try and figure out a puzzle where you have no ability to guess the answers.
Yeah.
It's just like completely arbitrary. Everything is Jeopardy reverse engineered. There's no way that you can play along as the viewer as to like figuring out the puzzle. It's certainly no 7 + 3 = 10.
Equals 10. Well, and then on top of that, you know, I talked about the funky timing of these movies. So
Yeah.
that stick of dynamite is going to hit what looks like the hull of this ship. They're going to get on their boat and speed away.
Mm.
And then they're solving crimes. He's like...
Solving crimes?
he's melting wax so that he can get a dial within the dial or whatever the fuck is going on. But what's funny is this movie...
It's made of wax and it feels heavy, therefore I will burn
Therefore,
it. I
I'll
will
burn
douse
it.
it in alcohol and burn
Yeah.
it.
The inefficiency of the movie is shown bare when they speed away, and there's this cutaway scene of Mads Mikkelsen with binoculars going, nope, they're going that way.
Well, in the middle of the laser line map, he does
Right.
that.
So
Just let the map be the map.
right. You're showing your disdain for the map a second time.
You're tinkering with the film's only constant.
You wait for over an hour to show the map and then show a second map just minutes later.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, isn't Mads Mikkelsen on a boat that should currently be sinking?
Sure. Well, if they'd have done with time travel what they should have done, it could have all been explained that he had to survive because it was a paradox. But anyway, it chose not to go there.
Fine.
And
But
then we're
anyway,
in
like the timing thing is all funky again because they
Yep.
leave them in the dust, and the next thing you know, the kid is like getting his ice cream cone on the streets
In
and
Sicily, yeah.
turns a corner in Sicily, and there they are.
Yeah.
Boy, they cut up quick.
And it's really Godfather light Sicily, isn't it? Puppet
It
shows
is
and
totally.
religious
I
festivals.
thought when they were doing that festival at the beginning,
Yeah.
I thought the same thought.
It's just like, again, it's Lucas and Spielberg would never think of it because they're contemporaries of Coppola.
Yeah.
And they work with him. It's like, I'm not going to shit on this guy's doorstep. James Mangold has no problem doing that.
No.
And when we get to the caves, again, I get that indie feeling.
I
Like
do
when
too.
they're walking into the caves, I'm like, look, feel, subject matter, all on point. And then they start singing.
Yeah.
They start like going ba ba
Echoing.
ba 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 ba, and just it's
I
like
guess-
again, this is the auction scene all over again.
I guess the part that I didn't like was that Indy joined.
Absolutely,
When she went ba 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 ba,
and there was
I
no
wanted to
acknowledgement
hear.
of that.
Yeah, I wanted to hear quiet. Would you? What are you trying to get us? You know.
Or he sings. I mean, maybe not anything goes. Mind you, the number of Temple of Doom references, it wouldn't. But he sings some song that she doesn't know or
Yeah.
something. This
Anything
scene
other than
needs
what they do.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. The strange scene where they're climbing rocks and he starts.
Blood of Kali,
I mean, I
the
guess
voodoo doll.
that singing really opened up, opened him up because he's like, he references how he's been beaten down, how
Yeah.
he's aging. He's
He's got screws and plates in his body, which is to say nothing of drinking the blood of Kali and having a voodoo doll of you.
Why does he mention those two events?
I think it's fantastic that all he remembers is from Temple of Doom.
I mean, it's almost arbitrary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Plus, those two events are back to back.
Yeah.
They're essentially the same memory. The only thing I can think of is that Mangold is such a big Temple of Doom fan that he's like, no one has directly referenced Temple of Doom.
I don't think it can be that because you and I are the only fans.
Apparently so. It's the first explicit reference to Temple of Doom in any of the sequels that followed it.
Totally.
But it's very clumsily done, so you don't even get that satisfaction.
Oh man.
And this is where we find out that not only does Helena have her own short round, but she has a short round with exactly the same backstory as short round.
The exact same story, and what bothered me the most is there was no comment from Indiana.
I kind of like that.
Really?
But I like that because I didn't want to hear the conversation that would result.
Okay, yeah, you're probably
I think,
right.
you know what? I think had this movie been made even like 6 months later, after K. Kwan got all the currency in the media, I think they would have gone and mentioned him.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think he's still a moot point when they were making this movie. I think he would have. I actually think he would have been in the movie, to be perfectly honest, had it been made 6 months later.
Yeah.
It would have been his boat, just full of elephants. Come meet all my best friends.
All my best friends. Oh, mercy.
And there's a drawbridge as well, so this is like this is like a Temple of Doom museum, this place.
Yeah,
and the
totally.
centipedes.
Centipedes. And
It doesn't feel right that Helena would be scared of them after
Well, I could
oh,
say
does
this.
it?
I could say the same for Indiana, though.
Oh, well, absolutely the same for Indiana.
Doesn't make any sense.
Bah!
Yeah, how bothered he is by these
Bah!
bugs. And since they're not real, it's hard for us to care.
There was a lot. This was mocked when it came out. The line, Archimedes was interested in water displacement, but which again, when you take it out of context, yes, it's a terrible line, and it doesn't explain anything. But I think it's a move in the right direction. This is more what I want from the movie. Him kind of solving puzzles using.
I do want him
historical
solving
trivia.
puzzles. I don't know why dropping 3 Rube Goldberg screws.
Because one thing everyone, even the stupidest person, knows about Archimedes is the bath, right? Eureka. He discovered water display. He put a. I don't know what it was. I don't know why he put in the bath. He put something of weight in the bath, and then the bath spilled over, and he was like, "Aha! It works both ways." Eureka, even, which he says later in this movie.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's sort of like what Andy Secunda calls schmuck bait. Schmuck bait. And we get another schmuck bait. We get another schmuck bait moment with the fucking wristwatch.
Well,
They say, clocks weren't invented. Never mind watches. Do they really think someone is in the audience who thinks that Archimedes lived in the age of watches? Do they really think we're that stupid?
Does Indiana believe that he has to explain that to Helena?
That's a completely different question, and one that is equally as egregious.
Yeah.
But there's a booby trap element of it, right? It's, again, we talked about in Crystal Skull how the booby traps start to feel very generic.
Yeah.
And this is another very generic.
And these feel the most
water
generic.
slide.
Yeah.
It turns into a water slide, and it's like there's this again. It's the rightification of Indiana Jones rather than the the Chachacoin Temple from Raiders, which is what they're always aiming for with the booby traps, but never quite getting there. I haven't sat down and counted how many times the characters in this movie get captured and then escape and then get recaptured, but
I know.
It's got to be in the double digits.
Has to be. Somewhere between 10 and 14 is my initial guess.
Yeah. God, it's weird. This is the thing where what works in a time travel film doesn't work here. Like the anachronisms of look, the Phoenix has propellers.
Yeah,
He's got a
bring
wristwatch
that up.
on. It reads comically in a movie like this, where in a normal time travel film you'd be like, well, it's that's part of the paradox effect. And then Indy gets shot, which kind of plays with the possibility that basically it's the first time we ask the question: is he going to survive?
Is he going to die? Yeah.
Yeah. Given that he's 80 and he said he's not doing any more of these, I don't see why we can't just let him die.
He says, I'm going to stay. And Helena says, you're right. Goodbye.
I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. That's where they seem to be going with it.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought that Indy would have said... Who'd have thought, like, at the end of Last Crusade, that first of all, that there'd be 2 more Indiana Jones movies, but also that both of them would have Indiana Jones saying Ike. Because when he's on the plane, he's like, who are you going to assassinate?
Yeah,
Ike,
right.
Churchill,
Ike.
And he's so far away from being the hero of this film at this point when he's being dragged onto the plane. He's even more vulnerable than his father was when he was kidnapped.
Yeah, totally. And once Phoebe Waller-Bridge gets on her motorcycle and is performing Evel Knievel level stunts,
Yeah.
not to mention Teddy, who's about to start flying a plane.
I didn't even know his name was Teddy.
Yeah, I believe I have that right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. They say it enough times, like in every Disney Lucasfilm movie, but
Man,
it never took.
Yeah, when she's hanging on that trunk of that car, I said, "Oh, so she's Indy." And then we realized that Teddy is her short round. Oh, she's really Indy. This is her Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
And then she's jumping off that fucking airplane.
Well, needless to say, these planes taking off looks terrible. I mean, we're back to this entirely fictional-looking reality that, and this is an aesthetic that began in Crystal Skull, but this movie is kind of doubled down on.
Well, and
which makes
to the
it
point of what
interesting to me that this was supposed to be the antidote to Crystal Skull.
To the point of our talking about Crystal Skull, we knew that, I can't remember the guy you said that was on set that said, yeah, the effects just weren't ready.
Oh, J.W. Rinsley, the guy who wrote the making of books,
The effects are supposed to be ready by now.
They are, yeah.
And they're not.
I know. And it makes, I mean, he unfortunately, J.W. Rinsler is now deceased, so we can't ask him, but it'd be interesting. So he never saw Dial of Destiny, but he'd be interested if he was like, oh, they were finished. They were just bad. We'll see. Continental Drift.
Yes.
It's like this movie has to have a number of science facts in it, like it's a PBS special.
Yeah, he says it like somebody would say Eureka.
It reminds me of, like, PBS Kids. You get these shows that are ostensibly like adventure shows, like Wildcrats, but you got to throw in as many kind of nature facts as you can.
Yeah.
So that you can get the grant for education that PBS gives. It feels like they're trying to get a grant from PBS, basically, a grant for education. The Millennium Falcon hyperdrive sounds on the plane, which we might as well bring on since we're essentially in a galaxy far, far away.
Far away.
Did you think? So here's a question: did you think they were really going to go through with the going back in time?
When I first saw the movie, I thought to myself, they're not going to do this, are they? That was the question I kept asking myself. No.
And they want you to ask that question with the whole turning round thing.
No. Yeah, I guess so. But once they, it's so funny too because they're.
It's cuckoo for that.
It's so ape shit.
It is.
Because he tells them that he's wrong. Mads Mikkelsen seems to realize what Indy is saying must be true.
Yeah.
But once they get through the fissure, he's like, I did it. I am a genius, Dr. Jones. And then, of course, it's revealed to be whatever it is. What is it? 214.
Syracuse.
214 BC, Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember thinking, okay, this is the biggest bullshit of all the bullshits I think I've seen.
Bridge too far, yeah.
And I guess it was more the scope of it.
Yeah,
how much time, how much money we're spending on it.
I completely agree. Yeah, so when they arrive in the ancient past,
yeah.
To me, this is the real nuke the fridge moment of the series. I mean, the movie's only been out for a few months, but I'm happy to say, wow, that movie really arrived in the ancient past on that one.
Mm-hmm.
This scope is exactly right, because compare it to the past movies' use of fantasy. We had the Grail Knight and the aliens for a few minutes max.
Yeah, right.
This is half an hour of Time Bandits.
Right. I just rewatched Time Bandits.
And there's a whole section with, like, is it Archimedes or there's a Greek, ancient Greece bit, isn't there? And the ancient Roman Greece bit with Sean Connery. There's Agamemnon.
Yeah, it's like Agamemnon. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Also, just a side point, Nazi cannot be the punchline of every joke. You have to write a joke. You cannot rely on the word Nazi. It's actually not funny unless you're Mel Brooks.
Right. Don't try being funny.
Oh, that's because you're German. Yeah.
Yeah.
The parachute is my next note,
Mm-hmm.
which is an inversion of Temple of Doom. This time the plane has parachutes.
Yeah.
And then they kill the villain with 25 minutes to go in the movie. Actually, it's only 12 minutes because of a 13-minute credit sequence. But
so long with that credit sequence.
Yeah. But that's the climax of the movie, or has been traditionally. When you kill off the villains, then the movie's over.
Mm-hmm.
But not so.
Not for this movie.
No.
But I think
now this Roman soldier is our villain for like a minute.
For 10 seconds. I think that's a byproduct of how movies are made today, you know? That's the over-explaining, the overlong, the overwrought.
Yep.
Okay, Voller's dead, but now we got to deal with this, you know? We're introducing new characters. Or, you know, one new character and one character that's only been talked about.
Yeah.
You know?
And Phoebe Waller-Bridge, when she says... It makes sense that she's punched up some of the dialogue on this one, even though they brought in someone entirely different to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Who did it for the Bond film that she did beforehand. She says, I'm a fan. She says to Archimedes, I'm a fan. And it struck me that in her punch-up, she puts in a lot of modern slang.
Yeah.
That almost creates another time travel problem.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Right.
I mean, of course, the main time travel problem of the movie is that the movie is playing, but time doesn't seem to be moving forward. But there's this time travel problem of, like, she says 50 quid and stuff that, I mean, it's already British slang, but it's also British slang of a much later period in history. And I guess by her just punching up stuff on set, you add a whole different level of anachronism to your movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the time travel they had a chance to make good on the time travel storyline, and they take it right up to the finish line and then they walk it back, which is this could have been full on bootstrap paradox,
right?
Where Archimedes never created the Dial of Destiny.
It was brought to him,
but he was handed it as part of a paradox, a la Terminator 2, and this whole thing is just one big time loop.
Yeah.
Which would have helped with the plausibility of this, you know.
But they make a point of showing that he's already building it.
He needs to build his own one.
Of Phoebe Waller-Bridge,
They give him they go as far as giving him the wristwatch.
Right.
And him saying, you were always meant to meet me. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge saying it's a force deck, because we've set up Chekhov's force deck in the earlier scene, with her card trick. And then they blow it, because if it's the bootstrap paradox, then it's easy to believe in, because then Archimedes doesn't need to solve the riddle of time and space. He just needs to write down, you know, he just needs to interpret what he's got, like everyone else has, in his own language. This movie doesn't even understand the conventions of the kind of movie they want to make.
I can't disagree.
And they won't let Indy die with dignity.
No.
I mean, what kind of a message does this send to, like, family members who are dealing with end of life, having end of life discussions with their relatives?
You have to be punched into life.
That's it. The thing to do is to ignore the person's wishes, knock them out, and then carry them comatose to where they don't want to be. And you know, the more I think about it, the more I like this alternate ending. They could have turned Indy into his own relic,
Mm-hmm.
and thematically capped off the
Thematically,
series.
it makes sense for the character and for the series, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But
and given him a fitting death.
mm-hmm.
But no, she punches him in the face, and
takes him back to Marion.
yeah, and we repeat the shot as if time is repeating itself, which it's not. Last minutes of the movie, we're still trying to make time travel happen. And then this is the moment at which James Mangold remembers, oh, this is supposed to look a bit old Hollywood. I remember that from the previous movie. Steven Spielberg always did something like that. So let's start to like enclose the screen in a circle.
Oh,
So you see that
boy.
the corners of the screen start to turn into like an old-fashioned curved spot.
Yeah.
Look.
I honestly didn't remember that from the first viewing, and when it happened when I was watching it for this one, I said, well, now you're gonna try and make
Yeah.
this into
Right. Yeah.
you know.
And it should be something that and if you're gonna do it, it should be something that looks like the late '60s or early '70s, not
Right.
something that looks like the 1920s.
And it goes back to your theory that really the hat is the star now.
Yeah. Well, so we get, the surprise cameo of Marion,
Mm-hmm.
which they did pretty well to keep a secret. I think through pre-publicity. I didn't know about it going into the movie. I knew when I started watching the movie it was going to happen.
I knew before.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not. And we're now in this blended family,
Mm-hmm.
which includes Salah's grandchildren.
Yes, right.
Which I don't. Again, I feel like that's a bit of an imposition. I don't feel like India ever agreed to take on Salah's grandchildren. So I brought you to the US, but the idea was that you'd make your own life.
Just stay away from the bad dates.
And, I can't help but thinking they reversed engineered the separation storyline because they knew she was willing to come back and do a cameo.
Yeah.
And why they killed off Mutt. Not simply because Shia LaBeouf didn't want to come back, but they don't want anything to do with him.
Right.
Or the character. And when Salah comes into the room, he's doing an audiobook version of the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I know, yeah.
Which I would love to hear in its entirety. John Rhys Davis tells
Tells the Raiders story.
from Salah's perspective. I'd love
Yeah.
that. And he sings Gilbert and Sullivan as he goes out, and then Marion and Indy go into the boat scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
So, the first time I watched this, my first thought was eliminate all of that,
Yes.
and this should really be the only scene in which they talk about Mutt. But if you're gonna bring back something from Raiders, I would have preferred her saying something to the effect of you quit, you left me. And Indy protesting, you're the one that left me. And she's talking about emotionally, and he's talking
Then we
about
quit.
physically.
Yeah. And essentially, historically, this is where the Crystal Skull matters. It's like, you left me, I left you. Let's call it quits.
Yeah.
We've each done it once now.
Yeah. But to me, if you're going to bring back a line from Raiders, at that moment, I'd rather her say something to the effect of, don't you ever leave me again. I'm your goddamn partner. I like that better.
Yeah. So I have unsurprisingly, I have an alternative here as well,
Okay.
which actually doesn't involve any rewriting. It just involves editing. I would have cut the reenactment
Mm-hmm.
and ended it with Harrison Ford saying everything hurts.
Mm.
And I really thought when I first saw the movie that they were going to leave it at that. And I was so happy for about 10 seconds before they started to go in, where she
elbow
pointed her
and-
elbow, and I went, no, you had it. You had it right there.
Yeah.
Because not only is that, like, you can read in a callback to Raiders of the Lost Ark in there, but you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
It could just be Indy just could be 80-year-old Indiana Jones going, no, everything hurts. I mean, there's no distinction between one part of my body hurting and the other. It would have been lovely, and he delivers it so well, and it's almost like... Then, because after that you get into the problem of, why does this conversation mean so much to these two people in world?
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't mean as much as it does to us.
No.
I don't even believe that these two would remember that this happened.
Absolutely.
At this point in their lives, after all they've been through.
Mm-hmm.
There was another way to go about that, but you know, that low hanging fan service fruit.
Yeah.
And it was probably how it came out. Like, hey, this scene's a little bit like the scene. You know, we could lead into.
He's been shot. He's probably hurting.
And then
and then the circle.
Well, but before that, when modern day John Rhys Davies as Salah runs around, he does it like a man who was pretending to be a monster, and his body got locked in that position, and now he's like that forever. Yeah, the hat. So yeah, the hat has won, right? It's won.
It's won the day.
It's now won the battle for representing Indy over Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
The next Indiana Jones movie is just going to be a hat walking around going on adventures.
The Invisible Man as Indiana Jones's hat.
And the circle ending is like, you know, a director who doesn't really know old movies but thinks he does. Mm-hmm. And when Lucas does it in the prequels, it's kind of like it, because we're looking back at, we know it's like we can do that on iMovie now, right? We can do that editing wipe on iMovie.
Yeah, but it's different for Star Wars because of how those movies are edited throughout. So.
Yeah, and he's calling back to the 1930s of it all.
Sure.
But it doesn't make sense doing that in a movie set in 1969.
Yeah.
Although I guess in Mangold's mind it's like, well, this brings the series back to the 1930s, but it does, but in
contrast to the whole rest of the movie you just made.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's...
Well...
And he grabs the hat back. So, again, it's the buyback.
Yeah, right.
It's the taking the hat from Mutt moment again. So why do they refuse to make this resignation
happen
on screen? Yeah.
We're not going to kill him. P.S. I'm taking my hat back.
I'd love it if they just made the choice at this moment to recast it with Tom Selleck.
That's great. All right. Well, try and whittle down the 13,000 minutes of credits.
It's not. They're not as interesting as you think 13 minutes of credits might be.
Okay.
That only makes sense to us in this podcast. It's the only indie film where the credits don't begin while the movie's still running. So we're still upending conventions. It's also got the Bond problem of rehiring writers from films you want to get away from. So rehiring David Cope, who wrote the Crystal Skull screenplay. And also the Bond problem of hiring Jez Butterworth to punch up your script, who was the guy who was hired to punch up the script of Spectre.
Okay.
Which, as we know, did not work. Which is interesting because then Phoebe Waller-Bridge does that job on No Time to Die. And apparently on this movie. And it's just so interesting that David Cope got away from that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Got away with that. The billing is nonsensical, but it's done differently from Spielberg's. Just legacy actors who have way too high billing for their cameos. Stella McCartney designed Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Morocco costume.
Oh, okay.
So that's 2 generations of McCartney involved in this movie.
Yeah.
Visual effects by important-looking pirates.
What?
Whatever this in-joke is completely lost on me. But
what?
I bet these guys... I guarantee that is a red flag that these guys are not easy to communicate with. Horses provided by the Devil's Horseman.
That must that must be some sort of computer company.
Well, it also sounds like you're gonna get a horse guaranteed to fuck you up.
Right? Hey, our star is 80, so just look out.
They have the credits for the ice cream song. You scream, I scream, we all scream for ice cream. I like to think John Rhys Davies just improvised that, and they ended up having to pay for a license for it because they couldn't cut it out of the movie. That's my final note.
All right.
Final credit check.
Should we talk about ranking, or you want to save it for the next episode? Like, let us think
Yeah,
about
let's
it
save
some
it.
more.
Yeah, I think this episode is long enough. We can.
All right.
Yeah, because then that allows us to let the second viewing sink in.
I got to
little bit.
ruminate a little bit. All right. Well, there you have it. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the movie that was made to apologize for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Did it? That's the question we have for you. So you're going to have to let us know. Oh boy. Find us on Facebook. Find us on Instagram. Don't find us on X.
Doesn't mark the spot. Still doesn't mark
Still
the spot.
doesn't mark the spot. Agreed. You can send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. All right. When you hear us next time, we will be pitching sequels. You'll find out our final rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. We'll be back. Say goodbye, Tom.
What about my dicky knee? Old-timey British slang. Who is the audience for this film?
I don't know.
Is this the reason why no one had bad box office? It was aimed at a person that doesn't exist.
That's great. All right. We'll be back. Thanks for listening.